along. So I'm really happy to see that so many of the PGCPS community are here this evening to explore environmental justice issues. There is, first and foremost, let me say thank you to Nicole Jackson. Nikki has partnered with Prince George's County Public Schools for some years now, looking at environmental justice, as well as helping with some of our environmental programming in connections with both the county, Bowie State University, University of Maryland, and all things in between. And so we really appreciate the work and effort that you have expended pulling together a top of the line level and series of speakers this evening. Thank you to all of the PGCPS family, educators, and staff that are here on this call this evening. We know you could have chosen to do a lot of things on this evening, but diving into environmental justice is something that is near and dear, I know, to my heart as well as James. We are both supervisors and leadership within the county, but also co-leads on priority one of our climate change action plan, which is all about climate change and environmental justice. And how do we build partnerships? How do we increase student opportunities to engage in topics centered around climate change, environmental justice, and the environment? And so we see this as a critical piece in communicating with the PGCPS community to move that effort forward. And so this evening, we're going to drop the sign-in sheet in a few minutes, so none of you missed it. There's over 100 folks on the call right now. We're going to drop the sign-in sheet in the next few minutes to complete, and I'm going to throw it over to James.
Thank you, Donald. Happy to be here, and I also want to say thank you to all of our presenters tonight. What excites me is they're our neighbors. Like, right, these folks live in Prince George's County or work in Prince George's County or both. They have lived the experience that our students are living here in the county. And what also excites me is that what you're going to see tonight is, our students are hearing about the climate data, the EJ data, maybe nationwide, maybe right here in Prince George's County. But I think you're going to see that connection between the data and the lived experiences that our residents have here in Prince George's County. And you're going to see how to take some of that information and bring it into your classroom. And so our students, they are having these lived experiences, and we're going to be able to tie them to the lessons and the curriculum and that we have in science, that we have in social studies, that we have in our health classes. And so that's what really excites me tonight, because we've got such really special and presenters tonight. So a couple more housekeeping issues. One, you're on Zoom. We know you drop, sometimes it happens. Make sure you come back. The default is just stay muted. There may be some opportunities to come off, but if you could, stay muted for our speakers. And as Donald said, we're going to be dropping in the sign-in sheet very soon. There'll be multiple opportunities. You only need to do it once, but make sure you get that done. And I think that's it. I will send it over to Nikki.
Thank you so much, Donald and James. Appreciate you so much. Hello, everyone. Hello again. Good evening. Good day for some of you. I saw we have a few international guests here. Some of our fellows from Center for Engagement, Environmental Justice, and Health have joined us. So I am Nicole Jackson. I am a local climate advocate here in the Prince George's County, Washington, D.C. area. And beyond that, I am the Director of Education for SIEGE, as well as the Principal Environmental Justice Advisor for Monarch PSG. So before we get started, I just wanted to say a quick shout out and thank you to Prince George's County's Public Schools for always welcoming me back. Also, thank you to City of District Heights Sustainability Committee for partnering with us on this event, who have made the honorariums possible for our speakers tonight. And that said, I'm excited about this workshop. This is the second workshop of this particular caliber that we have done with you all. And I enjoyed the first one so much, and the feedback that you all provided from the first workshop is the reason that we're doing this one again. And tonight we are bringing together not just our schools and local government leaders, but our community advocates. And we're all here for, a shared vision for a healthier, more equitable county or community, depending on where you live. I'm also excited this year because we are hosting this workshop during Women's History Month. And in this particular workshop, I'm so proud that all of our facilitators and presenters tonight are not only women, but women of color. So big shout out to all of our presenters there, making a splash for Women's History Month. So this is a powerful reminder that environmental justice is not just an abstract concept, but it is a movement led by the voices and experiences of those who have been historically marginalized and impacted by environmental inequities. And I would be remiss if I did not say tonight a saying that we all are accustomed to hearing. We stand on the shoulders of giants and stand on the shoulders of those that come before us. And I hope that we are making those giants proud with the knowledge that we're going to be sharing with you tonight. I do want to acknowledge that while we'd hope that Vice Mayor Jossie Gomez from the City of District Heights would be able to join us tonight. She is unfortunately no longer able to join us. That said, I will share a little bit about why we're here. So when we talk about environmental justice, we're talking about, the fundamental principles that everyone, regardless of race, regardless of income, regardless of our zip code, has right to clean air, clean water, uh, access to healthy foods, healthy place to live, access to equitable green spaces and infrastructures. And in recognizing that it's for far too long, communities like many of the communities, some that are right here in Prince George's County, have been born of, disproportionate burdens of pollution, industrial development, and divestment. So tonight we're going to move a little bit beyond theory and get into real on the grind issues affecting our students, families, and our neighbors. So we'll explore cumulative impacts of data centers, which is a hot topic here in Prince George's County this evening. We're going to talk about energy equity, which can also tie in directly to those overall impacts of data centers. And then we're going to talk about the challenges of food apartheid and how to combat food insecurity. And of course, we want to talk about air and the air that we breathe. And then finally, we want to bring all of this together specifically for our educators in the room. So the very last module that we will have is for educators. Um, and then for our educator audience, I want to offer a specific lens for you to carry throughout each of the presentations tonight. So as you listen to our presenters, Ms. Jamoni Overby, Ms. Staci Hartwell, Octavia Nettles, Oluwatoyin Tella, Ms. Blaine Gurma, and Christina Kwok, I want you to hold this particular question in your mind. If I were to try to teach this to my students, what idea, what issue, what question would I try to integrate into my class? So keep that in the back of your mind so that when we get to the section just for educators, you'll have a frame of reference. And then maybe, it's behind the science behind air quality monitoring. Maybe it's the math of cumulative impacts, or maybe, it's the history of redlining and how it connects to food access, or literature and advocacy and storytelling. But each speaker, I'm hoping, will plant a seed for everyone here, and hopefully, it will give you a concept or a data point or a story that you can imagine translating not just for yourselves and for your neighbors, but for the younger people that you serve in your classrooms every day. So I don't want you to worry about how you would build an entire unit tonight. That's what Christina is here to help you all with. I want you to really listen, be open, um, listen for one compelling idea that really speaks to you that you can pull into either your existing curriculum, or if you feel so compelled, think about something you can create that's new. So jot it down in the chat on a notepad, or just file it away in your mind and let our presenters, who are some of the experts in these areas, provide you with the resources that you need. And I will say one final thing now that I've seen all of our speakers are here. I'm so grateful that they're all here with you today. Normally, I would be one of the presenters as well, but I am so grateful that we have such smart neighbors, as James put it, here in Prince George's County, that so many smart women that we can all share this space with. So I wanted to take a step back tonight and highlight the other women in our community that are doing wonderful, fantastic work. So we have a rich evening ahead of us, and we've gotten the housekeeping out of the way. And with that, I will turn it over to our very first speaker, Miss Jamoni Overby with MOSAIC, who is going to chat with us, give us a brief description in terms of EJ 101, give us a crash course in the basics of environmental justice.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you to everybody. It is so amazing to see 122 and counting educators on this call. I am Jamoni Overby. I am a proud product of Prince George's County Public Schools. I attended Eleanor Roosevelt High School, Greenbelt Elementary, and Greenbelt Middle, and also a fifth generation Washingtonian by way of Prince George's County. So I'm so excited for this opportunity to be able to share a little bit of a crash course with EJ with you all. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. So let's get into it because I know we have a very, very busy afternoon or evening, and maybe we can sneak a little bit more of that sunlight in. Again, I'm Jamoni Overby. I'm an environmental justice advocate based here in Prince George's County. A lot of my work has been focused in Washington, D.C., but as a Prince George's County resident, I've always stayed connected and have been seen as a connector of a lot of these issues. Also working in the social impact strategy space into bringing environmental justice into how businesses and nonprofits kind of move about and see the ways in which they can bring that into their values and their core. I've also served as a lead prevention ambassador with organization Young, Gifted, and Green, and an EJ Oral History Project board member. So that's a little bit about me. And if you have any questions following up, please feel free to contact me directly at my email, or follow me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Come speak with students, anything that you may need. Okay, let's get into it. So, what is environmental justice? I thought it was better for me to use the father of environmental justice to share with you all what environmental justice is, because I think he puts it in the same way that I see it. So, I'm going to share this quick video and then we'll continue.
The environmental justice movement is not new. It has its roots in the civil rights movement. The term environmental justice was born in 1982 in rural Warren County, North Carolina, where over 500 demonstrators were arrested protesting the location of a hazardous PCB landfill. For more than 4 decades, Dr. Robert Bullard has been a leading voice, a pioneering researcher widely known as the father of environmental justice. He sat down with Jamila King from Mother Jones.
How much is climate change a civil rights issue?
The right to breathe is a basic right. We don't decide next Tuesday I'm not going to breathe. The right to have access to clean energy, to have access to food, and to have access to communities that are not underwater. These are basic rights, and actually it's elevated above civil rights. These are human rights that are not codified per se in a given state or nation. These are basic rights that cut across nations
We've seen a lot of young people really take the lead in bringing attention to climate injustice, to environmental justice. How important is that for you as someone who's worked on these issues for decades?
Every social movement that has been successful in the United States has had a strong youth and student component. Whether you're talking civil rights, peace and justice, women's movement, anti-war, environmental justice. And so it means that when we work together and form this collaborative effort of this intergenerational movement, we are powerful, we're unstoppable.
Why do you think that the issue of environmental justice has gone mainstream in this 2020 presidential election?
Any presidential candidate that does not acknowledge and does not deal with environmental justice in his or her campaign will be irrelevant. They're going to have to read up on it. They're going to have to understand the fact that environmental justice is not a slogan. It's not a bumper sticker. This is real. Communities are hurting.
And when asked which candidates should do more on environmental justice, Dr. Bullard said, all of them.
Okay, so feel like that gives a good overview of what environmental justice is, and I will, oh, let me see the slides. Okay. And then this is, of course, the Webster's dictionary of what environmental justice is, but I want to just emphasize that environmental justice is truly human rights, a matter of human rights, but it's also a movement. As Nicole shared, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and not only has it been educators and youth and community members that have been involved with this movement from the beginning, but it has been a real core of how we've been able to grow as community members, how we've been able to make changes as it relates to policy, and how we've been able to raise our voices and stand up against environmental injustice. I wanted to highlight the first, in 1991, the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit established the 17 principles defining environmental justice as fundamental human right. These principles demand equal protection from environmental hazards and the right to participate in decision making. and the halt of toxic production, specifically targeting the disproportionate harmful impacts on communities of color and low-income areas. So you can put it, I wish I could drop it in the chat, but I don't want to mess up my screen. But if somebody is able to Google and drop in, or you can use your QR code to scan your screen. As I go along, I'd really love if you all could kind of look at the 17 principles of environmental justice and really kind of see which of them resonates most with you. This was one of the core principles of the foundation and the history of environmental justice. And really, it was the first time that people were able to understand the relationship between your race, understand the relationship between your economic bracket, and then also your exposure to environmental issues. So in the chat, if you're able to, or if anybody would like to come off of mute and share a principle that resonates with you most. If you find it hard to pick just one, you can share why multiple principles resonate with you. But again, this is really a core framework for fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people. And I know that many of our environmental justice advocates and those in community really hold these true to their values. And that's something that I really love because it emphasizes not only the sacredness of the earth, but also self-determination, accountability, and that communal aspect that really makes it a movement. Okay. And I wanted to highlight, if you all are still dropping in the chat, I can't see, but I wanted to highlight number 16. Environmental justice calls for the education of present and future generations, which emphasizes social and environmental issues based on our experience and the appreciation of our diverse cultural experiences. And like I said, present and future generations, you all are present generations of educators that are being intentional about your time here today, spending with us to enlighten yourselves on these issues, but also you are working to really focus on the future generation of those leaders that will solve these issues that we have now. And I like to look at environmental justice through the five senses because I think because it is a human right and it is all encompassing, when you think of environmental justice, I think you can think of sight, you can think of access. What can I see? Can I see green space in my neighborhood? Can I see a grocery store? What can I see? Hearing, you can hear about noise pollution and what is going on if there's industry in your neighborhood. Taste, water, or your food. Am I accessing fresh and affordable foods? Am I accessing water, clean and fresh water? Is there lead in my water? Is there a boil notice on my, is there a boil advisory on my water from time to time? Smell, air quality. Again, industry. It could be an industry that is in your neighborhood. Can be industry that is miles away, but is still impacting your neighborhood. And then touch. I think of heat sensitivity, and the urban heat island effect, and where there's a lot of impervious surfaces or less tree canopy, and how that impacts how we experience heat. In some neighborhoods, it can be 10 degrees hotter, 10 degrees warmer than it is in another neighborhood just because of the tree canopy. And that is another thing of what you can see in that access. So when you understand these challenges and their impact on human life, those five senses is like the first step towards addressing them. Oh, I don't know why it keeps jumping all the way back there. Um, But then I also wanted to think about what are some of the challenges that might affect your community? So looking at air and industry, like I mentioned, ports, highways, warehouses, incinerators, water and flooding, stormwater, sea level rise, legacy draining inequity. So that could be lack of good stormwater infrastructure, climate heat. And, we mentioned in that video that the environmental justice movement is directly related to civil rights. And that history is deeply rooted into segregation and how we see our neighborhoods and our communities impacted. So, urban heat island effect is historically seen in redlined areas. Food access, again, I mentioned limited to fresh and healthy, affordable foods, but also are you able to grow food in your area? Do you have soil that is good soil for you to grow your own fresh foods? Are you able to safely get to a grocery store? These are all matter of challenges that affect your community. In green space, green space is more than, just being able to access a park, but again, that tree canopy and even your mental health and what being in outdoors can really do to the mental health of people. I want to get into a few things. I know we're going to dive deeper with the other presenters on different issues, but just an overview of environmental justice in Prince George's County. I wanted to look at food access and environmental health, and nearly half of residents live in areas that are considered food deserts. One issue that I was talking about recently with some of my neighbors is that all the shoppers in Prince George's County, I think, except for the one in Vista Gardens, have been closed, and that was and because of that, now that number has probably increased of more than 15% of residents experiencing food insecurity or food deserts. We see a lot of development in Prince George's County that doesn't necessarily bring fresh foods, doesn't necessarily bring healthy foods and healthy food chains into our communities. Limited access to healthy food can also worsen these health outcomes. So not only just looking at public health, but looking at how that is related to other issues within the Black community and communities of color as well, and how that exacerbates other health conditions. Getting a little bit into Fairmont Heights and flooding, and the proposed data center development. Again, we're going to dive deeper into that, but historically, Blacktown has experienced repeated flooding due to inadequate stormwater infrastructure and development patterns. And I will leave data centers alone because I can go on a tangent about that, and I'm going to let that presenter go deeper into that. But of course, people have been organizing around data centers because of the detriment that they have to the communities, the detriment that they have to the environments and our public health, our energy, very intersectional. And then into water pollution and watershed health. Potomac, Patuxent, and Anacostia rivers are all located within Prince George's County. These are our major waterways. Not only do we use it for recreation and enjoyment, but a lot of them are sources from our drinking water and at some point. And most recently, we had the sewage spill in the Potomac River that has posed enormous issues, has been the worst environmental disaster that people have noted in history, and what we're going to have to do to really get back to where we were, and cleaning our rivers and making them safe for people to not only enjoy, but to just have these are really resources that we need to protect and take care of, not only for the environment, but for ourselves and our communities. And then I wanted to highlight a little bit more of environmental justice across disciplines. Um, what, as a multi-hyphenate person that is interested in so many different things, what has drawn me to environmental justice and what has kept me in this space is that it is really related to any subject area, anything that you might be interested in. It is 100% impacted by environmental justice. Of course, like I said, the five senses and how you live your everyday life. But when you look into different disciplines, I'm able to connect with so many people because environmental justice can connect you to prominent leaders and movements through US history. You can look at internationally what environmental justice looks like in world history, how war impacts, and how environmental justice and injustice is caused by war and development. You can look at biology and the health of people through public health. You can look at government through decision making and policy and being able to raise your voice. Um, you can look at it through chemistry. I love to talk to students about beauty and consumer products. A lot of people don't realize there are lead in some of the protein powders that you use, and just all of these things of how this so integrated in your overall well-being and health. Um, are also into across these disciplines. Geography, I'll share some resources, but mapping and looking at redlined areas and how they've been impacted. Mathematics, you can look into data analytics and art and design, which is also really fun because storytelling is such a huge part of environmental justice. As a movement that is led by Black people, we know that oftentimes our history is erased. So storytelling and even looking at sustainable infrastructure and how people are able to design architecture that looks into green solutions, and those things are really important and all encompassing. So if you're trying to connect with your students about environmental justice, there is almost across the board, there's a way for you to do that. And then I wanted to highlight as a policy Brad, I wanted to really highlight how policy shapes environmental outcomes, of course, including zoning and land use decisions, infrastructure investment, climate adaptation funding, environmental regulation and enforcement. And you all know that best with the work that you're doing in the Climate Change Committee. And then I wanted to leave some resources. This is to the Maryland EJ Screen GIS mapping tool, of course, highlighting some local watershed groups, all of the river keepers. They have amazing events that they host. Also often host free boat rides and tours that you can also connect your students with for possible field trips. Community organizations that also do the same, and they receive funding from the state or from other entities that are able to come in and share more with not only you as educators, but also your students, or even bring them to their locations for field trips. State environmental resources, Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and Maryland Department of the Environment. I think it's really important that students are connected to some of these agencies at a younger age, to know that they have a voice, that they can raise their voice and stand up and speak out about a lot of things that have been happening in their communities as it relates to environmental justice. And then, of course, just highlighting some more universities and field trips, University of Maryland, also alum there, College Park, Eastern Shore, Harriet Tubman tours, and of course, the Riverkeeper boat tours. And then last but not least, wouldn't be right for me as an advocate not to leave you with some sort of community action. Again, using EJ mapping, you can identify environmental assets, burdens, vulnerable populations, and potential partners, but some actions for you to take, maybe to present to school leaders, or you can have your students present to school leaders, or you can present to your HOA on maybe an issue that is impacting your community. Something that I am doing is really addressing the dog poop and that is not being picked up in my community and how that is washing into our water systems, causing higher records of E. coli, and of course, that does not make the water safe for us to use to our pleasure and recreate with. Data collection and mapping. There are many opportunities to serve in as community water quality monitors, and you get to learn a little bit more about the intricacies of how it's all interconnected with our drinking water and then our water that we also lead pipes as well. I won't go on a tangent for that either, but habitat and greening projects. So maybe you want a community garden in your neighborhood, or maybe you want to advocate for a community farm or community garden at your school. These are all ways that you can take action, and of course, raising your voice in local decisions. Right now, Maryland is having their Maryland General Assembly, and there are many, many actions to take. So make sure you get connected and stay connected with organizations that might have all the experts to do the work, but you're able to amplify that and take action in some way, shape, or form. And again, thank you for inspiring the next generation to take
Why
action.
send people? I could never. This
Um,
is the 2-for-1 deal. High security intel and
Okay. Yeah. Thank you again for inspiring the next generation to take action. If you have any questions, I don't know if we have time for questions, Nikki. I know it's a crash course, so please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Nikki and get your information from me. But this was truly a pleasure and an honor to share a crash course in environmental justice with you all. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jamoni. We actually we have 5 minutes
Okay.
for questions. We got started 5 minutes late, so we'll end 5 minutes later. But yeah.
Okay.
So
And I'll
are
stop
there
there.
any um burning questions that we have for Jamoni? If you want to put your
Um,
hand up or come off mute. I think we have time for two. We
I
could
have
do
a
two
question.
questions. Yes,
Yeah, I
go
have a
right ahead.
question. So, you know, I think that from what I've seen over the years, fighting these kind of battles in court and trying to go through, the whole idea of, marching and that kind of thing. I was wondering, especially in this political climate, might it be an option to perhaps go directly to organizations and very wealthy, connected people to see if there can be some kind of pressure, whether it be boycotting or even going to again there are certain families that have leverage, they're wealthy enough to have leverage. Are there some ideas that you know of, or what do you think about the idea of directly to, I don't know who could help, Sam Walton himself, to put pressure on organizations or that kind of route, and instead of going through a 10-year court battle, uh, try to play this the way capitalists play it. Go to people's pockets and try to persuade people that have deep pockets. So I'll unmute myself. I'm sorry, I will mute myself now.
Stacy, did you have a response to that or you have a question as well?
I have a response, but I'll wait for you and
Okay.
then I'll chime in.
Go ahead. I feel like I feel comfortable with your response for that.
First of all, thank you so much for that question because during the grand pause, as we call it, of the current administration, we have got to find more creative ways of being able to reach out to people who are influential. One of the things that I'm very impressed with in the state of Maryland is that we have very strong coalitions. We are tethered, we are connected with very strong organizations. Some names you may recognize: the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Sierra Club of Maryland, and we are attached to funders who believe in the work that we're evangelizing around. So to answer your question, there's absolutely that opportunity, but you know what we need? We need capacity. We have to build momentum. And the way that that can be done is if we can get teachers and students to engage to help support that activity, and better yet, to lead that activity. Because I'll tell you, our funders are more apt to listen to our younger generation than they are to us old hats, us people who've been in this fight for a long time. They see us coming, they're like, "Oh, what do you want now?" But when they see young people engaged who are attached to voting parents or voting people themselves, they listen. So yes, there is great opportunity for that approach, and I'll turn it over to say it again.
Jamani.
Jamoni.
Yeah.
Yes.
Staci, thank you so much. I could not have said it better. And just to emphasize on that, we do have a lot of funders that are still. I think what we should always remember, even in times like now, is that the work never stops. So the work has not stopped since, we have a new person in office or anything like that. The work continues, but as Staci shared, we need more capacity. We need more people to galvanize. We need more voices, and we definitely need our youth who continue to lead each movement through each generation. Okay, and do we have time for one more question?
I have a comment.
Yes, I can't
Uh,
see.
we do have
Oh,
time
yes.
for one question, so we could do one comment and then the question.
Yeah, my comment is we live by the Chesapeake Bay, and we had to a few years ago replace our septic. Well, they have I don't know if it's a county law or state, that if you live within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, you have to get the special septic tank that eliminates most of the nitrogen so that we're not contaminating the waterways.
Yes. Thank you, Patricia.
I had a question I put in the chat. Ann Fleming from Benjamin Tasker here. Um, I would, I could probably rally some folks to come to like protests actually, if I knew about them. Right? So can you recommend a mailing list? Like whose mailing list would let me know that we're going to try to rally here about this data center coming in?
Yeah, I would definitely stay connected to, and I'll pass over to Staci after, but I would definitely stay connected to some of the organizations that she already shared, Maryland Sierra Club, Siege. I would stay connected to a lot of these organizations that are doing different things. I think it's PSL DC or CD, and then I'll also pass it over to Staci. But I think of really what's amazing is there are a lot of organizations that are doing great things, and when you stay connected to just their mailing list or their different actions, then there's so many opportunities for you to take action. Even if it's not a protest, it's sometimes you actually testifying or submitting comments to your legislators, which also makes a really big impact.
Thanks.
Mhm.
And I would just like to add that I know for our organization, we attempt to post all the activities that are going on. And so you could very easily go to our Instagram page and see some of the activities that are going on in the area, or to our webpage. And I'll share those hyperlinks with you at the end of my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you all again. I don't, we'll pass it over to Nicole to share the next presenter. But again, if you have any questions, I'll drop my email in the chat, and feel free to follow up for anything that you might need.
Thank you so much, Jamoni. Big ups to you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Staci, for chiming in. And this is very timely because Miss Staci Hartwell, who is strategic advisor and founding member of the South County Environmental Justice Coalition, is our next speaker. And Staci's going to be sharing with us about the overall impacts of data centers. And I want to be clear when Staci starts, just know that we are not saying that we are not advocating for data centers. We are saying that we are not proponents of data centers being unregulated and unchecked within our communities that become a waste and a burden on the community's resources. So whether that is land, water, or energy, there are ways to build these facilities so that one, the community isn't responsible for paying for the excess water that is used because they can be built to different standards. So I wanted to make that clear when we talk about the fight against data centers. It's not against data centers, it's about um, avoiding future harms to the communities that are already overburdened by so many environmental harms. So I'll turn it over to Staci.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Just a yes or no will do. Can
Yes,
you
I
see my
can see
screen?
it.
Thank you so much. I just didn't know
Looking
because
good.
you guys, I can't see you guys anymore. It says here, continue
Oh,
to share, PowerPoint, continue to share. All
yeah.
right. 1 second, please. Let me just get oriented because it has changed my entire screen here. And whoa, hold on.
Yeah, we can see your presenter view.
Yeah, yeah, that's not what I want you to see. I want you to see my screen. Hold on. Um, you can see my presenter screen, but you can't see the full screen.
I think we could see it. Try it again.
Okay, let's
Thought that's what we saw.
hold on. It's taking over both of my screens. I'm going to do this and can you see the screen?
No.
We cannot. State if you want, you can send me your presentation. I can share the slides for you.
Did you want someone to go ahead of me and then I can do that so we don't mess up the agenda?
Okay, perfect.
And you
Thank you
can
so
come back
much.
to me and I will send them to you right now. Do you want me
All
to
right,
email them?
you can email them or put them in a link. Send them to my Gmail. All
Okay.
right. Thank you so
Sorry,
much. We'll
guys.
move on. So we'll move on to Octavia Nettles, and Octavia is going to chat with us about energy equity and draw on that connection with data centers, actually.
Just want to be sure that I can use screen sharing to share my presentation.
Yes, you
Um,
should be able to, Octavia. You are a co-host, so you have screen sharing abilities.
yeah, it says host disabled participant screen sharing on my end.
Oh, my apologies. Let me find you.
Yeah, I got kicked out and I jumped back in, so that could be why too.
Oh, okay. Give me a second to give you.
Mhm. But yeah, while
All right,
they're bringing it, oh yeah, okay, let's see.
there you go.
Perfect. Yes, while I am getting this up, I do want to say hello and thank you so much for, ooh, let me make sure this is the right side. All my screens are everywhere too. Um, but I do want to say thank you so much, Nicole and everybody here. I am on a panel, a group of a lot of women that I look up to truly on the day to day. So it really is an honor to be here to talk about power to the people. Truly, we're hoping to
It's okay. They
achieve.
don't know I'm talking.
We are hoping to achieve the conversation around energy equity and energy justice, right? Just like what Nikki was saying before, we aren't saying that there should not be these types of advancements, and it would be great to know that, energy equity is more than just keeping the lights on. It is really about fair access, affordability, and participation within our energy systems. And so getting into just a little bit about what Jamani introduced us with, the principles of environmental justice. As we are going through today's conversation, I do want to start with number 2 on that list. Environmental justice demands that public policy be based on mutual respect and justice for all peoples, free from any form of discrimination or bias. So here we really are building on those EJ foundations as we get into our conversation on energy equity, energy justice. I'll talk a little bit about regional connectivity, but not too much because I know Staci is going to give us a really, really great understanding about those types of impacts, and then I will get into the just transitions. And so when we are starting with energy equity in itself, we know that this is, oh, excuse me. Okay, we know that the goal here really is to achieve equity in both the social and economic participation of the energy system, while we're also remediating those social, economic, and health burdens on those that are already being affected. And so for the four pillars of energy equity, which you may hear as you dive deeper into your research in this space, are recognition, justice, which asks the questions of who is vulnerable in these spaces and who are privileged in these spaces. We talk about procedural justice, which is on who are those decision makers and what powers do they have when it comes to the communities that they may or may not be in. We're also talking about distributional justice, which talks about who carries the burdens or the benefits of the energy grid of what we're talking about here. And then also restorative justice, which really speaks on how can we rectify past injustices, and also how do we move forward to make sure that these injustices are being managed well if they aren't something that we can completely eradicate. And again, this is truly a crash course. We could go through each one of these in very deep detail, but I do want to have some time for everyone else to speak and then questions if we have them. Moving forward into the energy justice side of things, we are explicitly centering the concerns of these marginalized communities, and we are aiming to make energy more accessible, affordable, clean, and managed well by our leadership. A couple of key terms that you will want to look out for and things that are easy for you to talk about, especially as you go back to your communities, are the energy burden, which is the overall amount of household income spent toward energy costs, right? Then we have energy insecurity, which is the inability to meet those household energy needs due to the high cost of energy. We have energy poverty, which is a lack of access to basic life sustaining energy, and then energy democracy, which is the notion that communities should have a say and agency in shaping the participation in their energy future. Now, I know that we do speak a lot about energy justice, and we're going to talk a lot today about PG specifically, but I do want to broaden our lens here because this is something that is happening across the world. For example, in, let's say, Ghana, in Accra, the capital city, they, I believe, started their time on the energy grid in the 60s, whereas there are some of their southern countries and cities, which are far more rural, that started to get on the energy grid in the late 90s. And so this space is already being manipulative from a colonialized perspective for America and specifically for PG County. And if you do want to go back to your communities or you're being faced with communities that are across the globe, please know that there is a globalized impact on all of the on all communities that are being burdened in this way. I do also want to talk about the just transition and the idea of that when we are hoping to have conversations about what does it look like to have a net zero future or a net zero, I would say, reality. Some of the big terms that you'll hear about are the employment creation, the local investment, the community growth, and economic stability, which all of those things definitely are benefits of being a part of a just transition. And what we are focusing on when it comes to energy justice is how is this being implemented in a way that is benefiting or at least mitigating the issues that we will be facing as we are developing as a society, as a culture, as a world. And so, really, when we are hoping to keep in mind that these places, they should be providing employment and equity, and it shouldn't be, I go to work and now I'm in a miserable working conditions, or my work environment is someplace that is unsafe or something that I have to be over prepared for. And the job that I am doing wouldn't necessarily be upskilling me into these other spaces that we are calling for our local terms the American dream. Same with investment. This energy interest infrastructure that we are creating here in this slide, it would say you'll see the communication of, energy infrastructure cares about the industries and services. What we are trying to do in this just transition is make sure that it has to do with the actual community and being able to support the community that is, benefiting from these types of industries and services. And the same can go for the economic stability and the community growth. Truly, there are angles and communities that can be brought to visibility as it comes to the grid and being able to have a just transition. And we are here, we are the people a part of this community that can make statements, that can make movements. And since we are so connected to the youth, this is the perfect opportunity to start that future planning and understanding of what a just transition can be. And the last thing I really want to talk about in terms of PG County data centers, honestly, I don't know how I was able to put this into one slide because the more that I learn about what's happening right in my area, the more I wanted to write. But I have here just a couple of examples of conversations that you can have with council makers, and I'll read them for you because I know they're a bit small. But one thing you can say is that Maryland currently has 41 data centers and counting, operated by 17 providers, not in counting, and over 13 data centers are being proposed, and a majority of them are hyperscale located in underdeserved and overburdened areas of the state. And the active proposals that are happening now, even today, I think there was a meeting that Jamoni talked about earlier. We are trying to build these data centers in Frederick County and Prince George's County, Charles and Montgomery counties. And so again, it's not just affecting us, it is affecting our neighbors as well. And then another thing that I love to hear, I am from Indianapolis, Indiana, but when I do hear about PG County, I always hear that they are proud to be one of the wealthiest counties that exemplifies Black excellence. And at the same time, there's a huge wage gap. So I am not surprised that the data center development conversations are starting in Landover, where there is a lot of health and wealth disparities. And at the same time, definitely stand on PG County being one of the wealthiest counties that really amplifies the Black excellence that we have here in Maryland, in the DMV area on the East Coast, honestly, in America. And so those are just some really, really great talking points that you can have with your council members just to at least open the conversation. And also on this slide, I wanted to highlight a little that last year in September, there was a rally held outside the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commissions just before they started talking about the different task forces that we have for data centers. And there was a public meeting there where a lot of the people that are on this call were really substantial in being able to have those conversations and really report on what's happening to the data centers. And so I definitely can keep going and I could talk all day about what I've been learning and what I've been experiencing. But we have so many other great speakers today. And that is, I know it was quick and dirty, but that's pretty much all that I have. Again, my name is Octavia Nettles. You can also reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I can put my email in the chat as well. But I do want to pass it over to Nikki for any like questions or to moderate that part of the conversation. I think you may be
Thank
on
you
mute.
so much, Octavia. Appreciate you. Before we jump back to Miss Staci Hartwell, are there any questions for Octavia or any comments about what Octavia shared with us? So I don't see any hands. Octavia, I think that means you've done a very thorough and excellent job. Not that our other presenters didn't, but I think we're going to be looking forward to see how this talk about energy equity um, directly connects to what we learn about data centers and the overall impacts of data centers. But before we move on to Staci, I did see one question in the chat. Um, Oh, well, they're about data centers. So that said, I am going to pull up Stacy's slides for us. Give me a second. I'm going to mute myself
While
and
you're
I will
doing
share my screen.
while you're doing that, everyone, I just want to give a shout out to Miss Nicole Jackson. She truly is the backbone that really holds us all. She is the glue that holds us all together. Like I'm sort of like old school when it comes to presentations and presenting them on Zoom. But Miss Nicole, she makes things right, and it is always a pleasure to work with her. So, I mean, if you can just show some love for Miss Nicole, because she brings it in a way that makes us all better. So, thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate you. Can we start from the first slide, Madame? Thank you so much. I wish my slides were as jazzy as Miss Octavia's, but they're not. They're just like, I'm stuck in the Wayback Machine. But I just want to say, Jamoni and Octavia, thank you so much. People are going to think that we practice this presentation. Yeah, I mean, your presentations are a perfect intro into mine. Hey, y'all, good evening. Again, my name is Staci Hartwell. I am a product of the Prince George's County Public School System. And I have worked in the environmental and climate justice space since 2014. I am, in my spare time, the strategic advisor for the South County Environmental Justice Coalition. While we are domiciled in Prince George's County, our issues are reflected. The issues that we focus on are reflected and have cascading impacts throughout the state and across the country, to around the globe, even. While we think globally, we do act locally. And just as a side note, I was a member of the Prince George's County Qualified Data Center Task Force. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, about the impacts of that. But I was asked to address cumulative environmental impacts. And when we talk about environmental issues, we often focus on individual problems. We talk about air pollution, we talk about flooding, heat, infrastructure, but communities rarely experience these problems one at a time. They experience them all at once. Cumulative impacts are not just one environmental problem. They happen when multiple stressors. I'll let you know when I'm going to move to the next slide, Nicole. They um they happen when multiple stressors occur in the same communities at the same time. Air pollution, water, heat, economic pressures. When those layers stack, the effects compound. But the important thing to remember is that systems created these layers and systems can redesign them. But before we talk about rankings, statistics, environmental burdens, I want to begin with something more important. I want to say this, that, Prince George's County is not just a statistic. You've heard all the great things about, the county from the presenters before me, Octavia and Jamoni. Prince George's County is one of the most educated, civically engaged, culturally rich Black majority counties in the United States. It is home to federal workers, entrepreneurs, scientists, educators, organizers, artists, and students who will shape our future. May I have the next slide, please? So what are we talking about for cumulative environmental and climate impacts? So let's try something very quickly so you can feel what cumulative impacts means. I want everyone to hold up one finger. I want you to imagine that this finger represents air pollution. Now hold up two fingers. Now we add heat stress. Now hold up three fingers. Now we add water infrastructure stress. Now hold up four fingers. Now we add economic pressures on households. Now add up five fingers. Let's think about all the stress that is related to having to live in that environment. Each one alone may seem manageable, but when they stack in the same place, keep holding it up. You should be feeling the pressure in your arm there, exercising those glutes. When we feel the pressure in that same place, the burdens compound. Okay, now, so that next slide. Thank you. This is slide, yes. So that stacking is what we call cumulative impacts. Now imagine experiencing not four of those stressors, but 6, 7, or 8 of them at the same time in the same neighborhood. That's why cumulative impacts matter. And Prince George's County is one of the places where those overlapping systems are most visible. But here's the important part. The same county that is overburdened is also overqualified to lead the solutions. Let's talk about it. Next slide, please. Prince George's County ranks in the 95th percentile in Maryland for environmental and climate burdens. What does that mean? It means our communities experience more overlapping environmental stressors than about 95% of other counties being compared. Only 5% of the counties experience equal or greater environmental burdens. But that does not mean we are powerless. It means something important has happened. That data is finally catching up to what communities have known for years. And when something becomes visible, it becomes actionable. Now, you might be wondering, who are the other counties? It's very interesting that those counties are majority Black, brown communities. In addition to Prince George's County, there's Baltimore City, which is what we call a hotspot, and across the bridge in Wicomico County, hotspots where, and those places, those cumulative burdens happen where we live. So anyway, those burdens include things like chemical pollution, climate stress, infrastructure failures, and economic pressures. Individually, these issues may seem manageable, but when they overlap geographically and socially, they compound. That is what we call cumulative impact. Next slide, please. Now, next slide, please. Thank you. Communities that are overburdened and underserved experience two things at the same time. They face higher environmental exposures while also having fewer resources to address them. Environmental justice is not just about pollution. It is about who has the power to shape decisions about land, infrastructure, and health. Next slide. So you've heard about some of these stressors in the prior presentations from Octavia and Jamoni, but let's look at some examples of community stressors, other stressors affecting Prince George's County. Superfund sites. There are 64 Superfund sites in Prince George's County. We're in the top percentile for having these sites that cannot be cleaned up and need to have intervention from the federal government, which we're not getting during the grand pause, to clean them up. They are hazardous waste locations that require long-term cleanup. The next thing that we have an issue with is transportation equity. This also plays a role. Outside of the Capital Beltway, Prince George's County has one metro station, while predominantly white communities to the north have 22. Air quality. Air quality is another issue. Prince George's County has consistently received failing air quality grades, and Maryland has some of the highest mortality rates associated with air pollution. The epicenter for this is in Baltimore, but Prince George's County also has received consistently a failing grade from the American Lung Association. Recently, we also experienced, as you heard about earlier, the most historic sewage infrastructure failure that has released over 240 million gallons of raw sewage into the Potomac River, creating a major environmental and public health concern. I sit on the board for the Potomac River Keeper Network, and they were among the first responders to begin to report on what this issue really means to our waterways. And there are some people out there who live, they fish in the Potomac River, but that fish is not there. We can't eat that fish now, but it's called subsistence fishing. But because of the spill, they can't do that. You certainly cannot get into the Potomac now. So if you're thinking about it, please do not keep your dogs, because animals like to run into the water and start drinking that water. The water is highly contaminated now. So the next thing on the list is PFAS contamination. We sit next to Andrews Air Force Base. We also have Bowling Air Force Base, and we have the fire training facility that is right along the Potomac. Now, this PFAS contamination and air traffic noise, rerouted air traffic, and climate-related heat flooding, each of these alone would warrant attention. But together, they form cumulative burden. So you might wonder, like, well, what the heck is PFAS? PFAS is it's an acronym, and I can't say the word, something fluoro. You can Google it. But anyway, PFAS is called a forever chemical. Oh, I'm sorry, next slide, please. Yeah. PFAS is a forever chemical. And they were widely used, or are widely used, in firefighting foams and industrial products. And at Andrews Air Force Base, they are often doing a lot of testing to be able to put out fires for Air Force 1 and 2. And so there's a lot of that's going off into the waterways. And they persist, and forever chemicals persist in soil and water for decades and have been linked to cancer, immune system disruption, and other health risks. I'll tell you, down the Patuxent River, where there's Calvert County, they have among the highest rates of breast cancer in the country. And they're beginning to look at the waterways. And, we were talking earlier about wells, water wells that people have supplying their homes with water. And they're beginning to wonder whether or not this PFAS contamination is a contributor to them having the highest rates of breast cancer. And they're just our neighbor to Prince George's County. So these are real health issues. So, in Prince George's County, PFAS exposure concerns are associated with, like I said, the military and firefighting training activities nearby. Next slide. Now, you heard someone. Now, I'm telling you all this, and I'm going to bring it back home, and I'm going to talk about data centers, but I want you to feel the weight of all of these issues on our community. So now, you heard someone mention earlier about food security and environmental justice. Environmental justice also intersects with the food we eat. Food security means people have reliable access to safe and nutritious food. But environmental conditions such as flooding, pollution, economic instability can disrupt these food systems, not to mention just outright racism. Food security depends on 4 things: availability, access, utilization, and stability. If any of these breaks down, communities experience food insecurity. And just so that you know, just for an example, Prince George's County is 494 square miles. We're bigger than DC, but we have a fraction of DC's budget. That's an aside. But check this out: 494 square miles, and we have got 1 Whole Foods. Just across the bridge in Alexandria, there are 13 square miles. And guess how many Whole Foods they have? Guess. Well, I'll spare you. They have 3 and 13 square miles. Why is that? Anyway, so let's bring it on home to data centers and how they add to cumulative impacts. Next slide, please. So this is the connection, which is where our previous discussion began when I presented to you all at the last convening that we had. Data centers power the digital community, but they also introduce new environmental demands. They require enormous amounts of electricity to operate and cool servers. Let me ask you, how many people have experienced an increase in their electric bill? I can assure you
I have.
that many, many people have. I can assure you that part of the reason why your bill has come up is because of the proposed proliferation of data centers, not in just Maryland. No, because we are part of a bigger community called the PJM, and there are 13 states that are involved in there. And that when they add a data center down in Virginia, among the cost for that data center is spread throughout the 13 states that are a member of the PJM. So this creates a problem for us, not just if it's just in our backyard, but even if it's in our neighbor's backyard. The PJM is outdated. It needs to be reformed because the decisions that are made at the PJM are greatly influenced by their members. And guess who their members are? They are the generators, the constellations of the world, and the distributors like the Pepcos and BGEs of the world. And they wield a lot of power, and no pun intended, and they greatly influence the decisions that are made around what your utility bill is going to be. So anyway, so not only do they consume a lot of electricity, but the water. We are in a global deficit for water. I don't know if you know this because, they try to manage it carefully. The WSSC tries to manage it carefully, our water company, but they ration water in the summer. It's not a big deal because they've been able to do it. But what are you going to do when you start adding, so many data centers that consume so much water? Hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day, not more than most cities consume. And not only do they consume that water, but guess what? What are they going to do with the discharge, the water that they use that is now polluted? Where are they going to put it? They don't have an answer for not only the amount of utility they consume, but also the discharge, where they're going to put that water once they use it. So, that's it around the water. Then they have backup generators. These backup generators produce additional air pollution. Now, we're already suffering from getting an F from the American Lung Association for our air. So now you have a system that's going to add even more pollution. And then they have the audacity, like at the Landover site, to want to put this next door to where people live. Those people are sandwiched between Route 202, they are sandwiched between 495, and now they're going to have a data center. That's adding insult to injury. These backup generators produce additional air pollution, and the facilities themselves require large areas of land. When these new demands are added to communities that are already experiencing environmental stress, they contribute to environmental impacts. The question is not whether data centers should exist. The question is whether the question is, how they are planned, powered, and regulated so that they don't compound existing burdens. My next slide and my final slide. You know what? I swim around in, I don't have a life outside of this. This is my jam. I do environmental climate justice for fun. Some people knit, some people golf. I do environmental justice. I love it. So I'm often in the chats, like on Nextdoor and everything, and people bring so much smoke, so much drama, and say, "Oh, I'm sick of this. I can't stand that," and blah 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 blah. Well, all that talking goes nowhere. We need to focus those discussions to where it can make an impact, and that is with our electeds and our appointeds. That's all that matters. Okay, so I just want you to know that you have more power than you think, and especially for the young people who are on this call, you have more power than you think. The single most important thing you can do to address cumulative environmental impacts is to participate in democracy. Hello. You must vote. And if you're not of an age to vote, you must encourage people that are in your life to vote. That is the single greatest power we have. And people say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. They don't listen to me." Well, look what's happened now. as a result of us not voting and supporting issues that are important to us. Look where we are now. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just ask your parents about their electric bill, or look at your electric bill. Ask your parents about whether or not they've been laid off from one of their great government jobs or not. Ask around. It is a vote that made the difference. The next thing we got to do is educate others. We have great opportunities. It's on the slide. Our website. We're having an event this Saturday. We're taking students down to the climate change conference in New Orleans so that people can get educated on what the issues are. And the more you know, the stronger you are. So participate in the legislative process. We have on our website a link where you can send a letter to a legislator. You can write letters to the editor, and we can do a lot of projects during Earth Month that can help address these issues. And that's coming up next month. As a matter of fact, we're organizing a screening of a great movie called Plastic People. It's going to be free. We're going to give you popcorn, and we're trying to do it through the school system. So we're trying to link into the school system to bring this movie so you can see it. It's a great movie and will really help to put a lot of these things in perspective. Invite elected officials to your school to speak. Create videos and share your perspectives. When communities speak, systems change. And the same county that is currently overburdened is also overqualified to lead. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Staci. I know we have any questions for Staci? I know we have some comments for sure. Thank you, Miss Stephanie, for sharing in the chat. Do you know your local reps? So yes, Miss Stephanie has shared a link for people to look up the legislators in their districts. Okay, well, I don't see any questions. That said, we are at 6:22, so we're going to take a slight deviation in our program and switch it up a little bit. We're going to move into air quality really quickly. Um, because that's a much shorter presentation. And what we have talked about with Prince George's County Public Schools is because Prince George's County Public Schools is part of a program with University of Maryland where we're doing air quality monitoring throughout the county. We will have a separate session. We're not sure it'll be a PD, but everyone is invited where you can learn more about what's happening with air quality specifically in Prince George's County. That said, I'm going to turn it over to Blaine Gurma, who's going to chat with us about air quality. And then after Blaine, we're going to hear from Oluwatoyin Tella, who's going to chat with us about food apartheid, food security.
Hey, thank you, Nikki. And I'll share my screen. All right, is everything clear for everyone?
Yep, perfect.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Blaine Gurma. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Maryland. I'm studying environmental sciences, and I conduct research within the Health, Environmental, and Economic Justice Lab within the School of Public Health. And I've been, as Nikki mentioned, I've been working since I started my program in 2023 on helping to establish a community-based air monitoring network across PG County, and specifically one of our really powerful partners has been PG County Schools, Science Education, and our partnership with Mr. Donald Bell. So great to be here. So as also Nikki mentioned, this is just a short preview on local air monitoring and why it matters to why a local air quality monitoring is important in our schools and communities. And then hopefully down the line, we can have a discussion on how we can take that even further into the classroom and take action. Okay, so quickly the agenda. I'll just talk about a little bit about air quality and its health impacts. Then I'll talk about the purpose of local air monitoring, speak briefly about our community-based air monitoring network in PG County, and just bring up a few case profiles in residential settings, schools, and churches. So air quality, air pollution is generally, a mix of chemicals from many sources that can harm health. It could be from many of the sources that were mentioned previously. Even data centers have been shown to contribute to air pollution. It could be a local facility that may be emitting some kind of air pollutant. It could be also mobile sources like cars. Living by a lot of highways is also a source of air pollution. And in the research that we do at the EJ lab, we mostly focus on PM 2.5, which is it's a class of particulates, basically saying it's a particulate that's a size of 2.5 micrometers. So you can see here how small that is in reference to a strand of human hair. And there's different varying sizes of particulates. So things like dust and pollen and mold would be called PM10. So it's at 10 micrometers. And then PM 2.5, which are products of combustion and are composed of organic compounds and metals and many other things, are even smaller than that. So just to give you an idea of how tiny these things are, but how much of an impact they can actually have. So being that these particulates are very small, they can enter into your lungs, and the smaller they are, the more easily they can even pass through into your bloodstream. And so that's how we find that they cause different systemic issues over as we're exposed to air pollution chronically, which is very much the case in environmental justice communities. So it's been shown, there's a lot of strong evidence showing the contribution of PM 2.5 to respiratory and cardiovascular disease. And it's very clearly shown across the United States how exposure to particulate matter is disproportionately affects low-income communities and communities of color. Being that we're all, educators here or people who are interested for the sake of or concerned for the sake of children and adolescents, I just want to bring up some also specific impacts in ways that children are more susceptible to particulate matter and air pollution. There are some general associations. These are not causal things, so we can't say that they're definitely contributing to this, but there's been nationwide and large population-wide studies showing associations between particulate matter exposure and negative impacts on cognitive function. So they've seen associations with worse test scores and class performance. Also some associations with mood and emotional health, and a very clear impact on increased asthma, emergency room, and hospitalization visits. So children are uniquely impacted because they are their breathing rates are faster compared to adults, which allows them to take in more pollutants compared to their size. They're also at a different height difference, so that can also affect how much they're exposed to air pollution depending on what the source may be. And also they have less autonomy naturally in controlling their environment. So what the parents do in the house, what the teachers do, what all of their caregivers do determines their level of exposure. Okay. So now we'll talk about local air monitoring. So just to give us some context as to why our lab even has decided to focus on local air monitoring. So all of us are able to see the local air quality on our weather app on your phone. And that number, it comes from a government monitor or called a federal reference monitor. These monitors are the gold standard. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars worth. And they're not easy for anyone to obviously to use or to purchase. And although they may be the gold standard, they are disparately cited across the country. So the EPA is the general authority to monitor air quality across the US. But unfortunately, most of the time, these gold standard monitors, they're cited or like installed far away from most communities. So like the closest one here, I'm in College Park, and I work with a lot of communities in central PG County. So the closest federal reference monitor is in Beltsville. And so it's not really, we can't really say that what the readings are from these monitors actually tells what locally we're experiencing. So a study here shown, this figure here is from a study done by Chambliss. And this study was done in San Francisco, where they drove around on the streets with an air monitor, and so that they could capture the hyper local, block by block, mile by mile levels of air pollution, different types of air pollution. So you see nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, black carbon, which is a form of particulate matter, and ultrafine particles, which is also another class of particulate matter. And we can see that not even within like less than half a mile, and block by block, we see that there is a drastic difference between the level of air pollution. And this very much is this difference, or this disparity is amplified by if these communities are highly segregated or heterogeneous. Sorry, okay. So this brings us to why local air monitoring is important. It allows us to measure local air pollution variation, identify potential health risks and disparities that we might have missed with government level data. It helps to inform community awareness and action. So I'll mention later on that, you know, the tools that we use are much easier, and the data is much easier to access and understand for a community to actually use and take into action. And also we're generating data for research and solutions, data that is more representative of the community's experiences on the day-to-day. So point blank, we can't rely on government measurements, and that's why this type of research is really important. So since 2019, I believe, the EJ Lab has been working alongside community members, as I mentioned, PG County Science Education, and also Black churches, in order to fill the gaps that I mentioned earlier in air monitoring across PG County. So to date, we have over 60 air monitors we've installed. So this here is a snapshot of the purple air map, which shows you publicly people who have installed air monitors or purple air monitors at their residences or anywhere else that they would like. But the majority of the monitors that you see outside of the Beltway area, so like all up here, Bowie, Laurel, and even down here, Brandywine and Clinton, these monitors were placed by our lab because we saw there is very much a gap in understanding the local air quality here. But a lot of the also air monitors are sited here closer to the DC border, where we know is contributing a lot to air pollution. So we want to be able to monitor that as well. So just want to quickly talk about what the data has shown so far, and talking about 3 different case studies. So one of our residential, or like a big aspect of our network, is residential or community members who have allowed us to install purple air monitors at their homes. And a lot of our community members are within the Cheverly community. Just to give some background as to what is the context of the whole town of Cheverly. This was pulled from EPA's EJ Screen analysis multi-site tool, which is something that is not currently up, but there are sites that have collected all the data so that they're still accessible to us now, which is great. So here I can show, I just want to highlight how particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide and diesel particulate matter are at a high percentile compared to the rest of the state within Cheverly. And then here in the EJ indexes, we see that for particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, diesel particulate matter, and proximity to traffic, they are at a very high percentile in terms of how disproportionately low income and disadvantaged Black or Brown communities are impacted by these sources compared to their counterparts. So here is 2 site examples. Up here is the Pack Trust facility, which is a distribution facility that's placed right in the middle of a residential area of Cheverly. And we can see that the levels of air pollution are pretty much leveled out across the years, but we see by these little dots that are rising above this standard by the EPA, we see these are all little events, outliers, as you would say. But there's a lot of these events in which the air pollution goes beyond what is suggested even by the EPA. And so we see here at the Pack Trust facility over a 3-year average, their 90th percentile is 30.8 micrograms per meter cubed. So just as a summary to say that this value is very much close to the EPA standard. So if this number here was 35, this would require the EPA to come in and do something about this facility contributing to the local air pollution. So we can see that this site is actually close to Fairmont Heights High School. So, and then in another case, this graph here at the bottom right is a local residence. And their air pollution, as you can see over the years, there's many outlier events in which air pollution has gone sky high and past the EPA standard, and their average 3-year 98th percentile is 20.9. So that's a little too close to comfort to the 35 micrograms per meter cubed standard, as I mentioned. So these are 2 sites that we would, for example, pay close attention to as researchers alongside the community members living in this community. And this site is actually pretty close to Gladys Noon Spelman Elementary. So we could think about this as similar exposure to the students at these schools. How much more time do I have? I think I might be talking a lot more than I thought.
About 5 minutes, Blaine. Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to bring up an example of a school. One of the schools that we've been monitoring is Oxon Hill High School. We can see that the community of Oxon Hill is particularly impacted by particulate matter, diesel particulate matter, and their traffic proximity. And also there's disproportionate impacts of these exposures among Black and Brown and low-income communities in Oxon Hill. So here we can see that there's a lot of outlier events going past the standard. And the average 3-year 90th percentile is 27.3. So just comparing that to 35 micrograms per meter cube, this is one of the high outliers compared to all of our school sites. So this is, you know, a school or an area that we should be focusing on a lot. And then moving on to an example of a church that we've been monitoring that's located in Brandywine. So Brandywine is a little bit of a different landscape compared to Oxon Hill and Cheverly. It's a little bit farther away from roadways, but we see that they're more susceptible to exposure from Superfund sites. So that's something else that we didn't really get to talk about in terms of exposures within environmental justice communities. So we can see here that that's a big issue here. And so a church that is cited here in Brandywine is called Union Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. And we see that over 2023 and 2024, the air pollution we've seen a lot of spikes or high events going across the EPA standard. And their average 3-year 90th percentile is 29.2 micrograms per meter cube. So pretty close to 30. So this is a site that we would look closer into and pay attention to in the future. And this site is actually pretty close to Gwynn Park Middle School and Brandywine Elementary School here. Okay, so I just want to say thank you for your attention. And I would really appreciate anyone reaching out if you are all interested in having further conversations and engaging with air monitoring tools and air monitoring data in your classrooms. And I'm hoping to provide a future workshop where we can dive deeper into the air monitoring data we've been collecting over the years across PG County high schools. And talking about how much you guys as educators value this data. Does this data, make sense? Can you even use it? How is the best way for you to be able to use it? What are the barriers to that? Just really interested to hear more about that. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Blaine. We really appreciate you. Because we're going to do another session with Blaine, I'm going to skip the questions with the audience, but ask one really important question since we were talking about advocacy before we move on. So, Blaine, could you share possibly how students and schools and community members can leverage the data that you all collect from the air quality to advocate for better environmental policies in their communities?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement for the PG County communities to advocate for their air pollution or air quality. And I think, as we mentioned, students' voices, youth voices, the voice of families, voting people is really important. Being able to someone to say, hey, my air pollution is not that great, it can kind of, it has some impact, but not as much impact. But if a student can actually say, hey, I did a science project, I did some data analysis on this, and I've been seeing that actually the increase of air pollution within my community and how it's actually also affecting my asthma or like my classmates' asthma. Being able to tell a detailed story like that is to your local policymakers. There's a lot of policies that are on the docket now, like the cumulative impacts bill. I know that Siege is working on a lot and advocating for. So there's a lot of coalitions that you could go and get onto their meetings and share your voice or provide testimonies to support the fight. I believe also the mere fact of getting students excited about being within environmental careers is another thing. You know, we need to think down the line. There's a lot of like, I would say, people are really sad and disappointed and kind of thinking about, should we turn away from environmental science or environmental health or environmental justice careers because it's not being funded, because we're being, you know, torn down. But we need to put in more into the educational system to continue that and inspire students to stay within these careers in the future. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Blaine. Very perceptive, very astute answer. So we have one more presentation for you all before we take a short break, and then we'll move into the portion that's specifically for the educators here on the call. So we're going to move on with Miss Oluwatoyin Tella, who is a local artist and advocate, who is going to speak with us about food apartheid and using agroforestry as a means to combat food insecurity here in Prince George's County.
Indeed. Good afternoon, everybody. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for having me on this panel. The panel, this is a great talk. I'm so excited. And also, it is a bit heavy, but we're going to lighten it up with some solutions here that we control as human beings, as a community, as custodians of the earth. So I have some good things for you all to lighten that load. Um, I'm Oluwatoyin Tell. I'm the founder of Greenhood. It's a nonprofit. I live in PG County, actually, and I am a few walking distance from the one Whole Foods that's in PG County, as well as the one Trader Joe's that's in PG County. It's a good thing, a double-edged sword, in that I met this woman from Bowie, and she told me that they were soliciting Trader Joe's for years to have them move into the Bowie area, and they basically went to College Park. That really didn't need another grocery store, honestly, but it's good for me, but it's not good for the collective. It's really not. So I went to Howard University and I received my degree in electrical engineering, as well as a master's in fine arts and painting. And so right now I am an ecological engineer. And as Nicole said, I am an artist. I founded Greenhood. I was tired of driving through our communities, predominantly Black communities, and just seeing concrete. I was tired of the concrete, tired of the heat, tired of the lack of tree canopy compared, Capitol Heights compared, some parts of Capitol Heights and District Heights compared to Tacoma Park with these huge old trees. And, they have ordinances where they cannot cut them. They have to get permission. So I said, what can I do? And I created this nonprofit. And so I've been designing food forests in schools, private homes, colleges, and I'm just excited to share this with underserved and under-maintained communities. So I want to define what food desert and food apartheid and the difference of those two terms. So food deserts are areas lacking in access to affordable and healthful foods due to injustices and all that, you know, discrimination. And food apartheid are areas targeted by structural injustices and disparities that lead to lack of food access. And these insecure areas are indeed entrenched in historical, political, social, economic, as well as racial systems. So food apartheid, of course, so apartheid refers to the racial, and this is for the students on the call. They may or may not know this, but the racial segregation that was enforced by law in South Africa from 1948 to 1994, which was based on and researched by white South Africans, on Jim Crow laws of the U.S. South, is based on that. That was their blueprint. So we know what we're facing here right now with food insecurity, that something like apartheid was just a copy of the original. Now, these underlying systems of oppression have led to disparities in food security in predominantly Black neighborhoods, and we see that. Um, so studies have shown that as poverty rates increase, supermarket and access to healthful foods decreases. Convenience stores, small convenience stores that just sell processed and packaged foods, they increase in these areas, and we know liquor stores also increases, right? We have limited access to these supermarkets, which impedes our health and also increases the rates of obesity, heart disease, and other ill effects on our health and our bodies. So it's interesting when comparing communities with equal poverty level, Black and Latino communities had the least amount of supermarkets, while white communities had the most. We also see that these discriminatory planning and policies were supported by redlining in the United States, and we're still seeing the effects of that today. This graph on the right is showing some parts of the DMV, some counties, and as all the other as the presenters have said astutely, that Prince George's County has one of the highest, if not the highest, food insecure areas in our tri-state area. Okay. So how can we solve this, right? We have all these facts, we have all these issues. How can we solve these issues? And I propose that we heal our communities with nature's intelligence. The solution is there outside. Though the air is being polluted, our soil, our water, and some people, we have nature's intelligence to help us. Free. It's for free, right? Um, Now, how do we go from a concrete jungle to an oasis? I'm going to go through the principles of permaculture, right? And we're going to go through it so that you can have a takeaway and create your own oasis, whether it's your backyard, your church, your temple, your apartment, your balcony. You'll be able to take away something from it to help yourself, your students, your classroom. So permanent agriculture it's permaculture is permanent agriculture, and it's a collection of global indigenous techniques that incorporates the wisdom of nature by weaving an interconnected and regenerative ecosystem. So we're mimicking what nature already does, right? Designers like myself, we create spaces that mimic the sustainability of nature through principles of design and ethics, which I'll go over, renewable energy, natural building materials, etc., beekeeping. But we're using so many modalities that nature already has. We're bringing it together and we're mimicking what nature does effortlessly and beautifully. So with the principles of, I'm going to go through this really quickly. And again, you're going to have takeaways in this presentation that you can implement right away, tonight even. So one of the first principle is observing and interacting. So you want to observe the environment around you. You want to go into your space, your school, your yard, wherever it is, and take time to engage in the space and see what happens when it rains. Does it flood, right? We talked about the flooding in Fairmount Heights. Does it flood? Does it stay dry? Is the soil clay or is it more sandy? You want to pay attention to these things because that'll help you when you're planting your trees, your shrubs, and all these things. So the other principle is catching and storing energy. We talked about uh, lack of water, right? Miss Staci talked about that water has to be distributed in a stingy way a bit, right? We have high temperatures in the summertime, but we can remedy this by having rain barrels. And if you can't have access to rain barrels, you can use buckets. So we catch and store what nature gives us for free. The sun is one and the wind is another. So by developing these systems that collect these free resources, when they're abundant, so when we're in the rainy season, when there's sunshine, we collect that energy through solar panels, right? We can use them in times of need. So nature always provides, right? We have an abundance mindset. We don't think of lack. There's always a solution in nature's intelligence. I want us all to remember that and feel that in our hearts because that's really, really important. And we want to contribute to a zero waste society. Right now, there is a lot of waste. And a way we can remedy that in our own homes, in our schools, in our places of worship is by practicing composting, recycling, reusing, and waste management. One example is using and creating eco bricks. And we can create eco bricks really simple. It's a creative way to reduce your own personal and your family's plastic materials, right? So you get a water bottle such as this. Everybody, has one, including myself. We come across it at some point, and you have plastic bags, right? You may have visited somewhere outside of PG because you don't want to pay, that money, but we have plastic bags, and you have a stick, and you just keep putting Ziploc bags, you keep putting it in here, you stuff it as it shows in the camera, in the video, and you keep putting your plastic in there and stuff it and stuff and stuff, and it becomes hard as a brick. And we can use these eco bricks to create garden beds and other cob structures. And it's really simple. It's gonna take time. It may seem like a lot of plastic, but you stuff a lot in there and we're able to reuse and keep all these things out of the landfill. It really works. I was first introduced to it in 2014 in Belize, and we actually were able to create some structure with it. Composting. So being able to value renewable resources. So we all eat, we may not finish everything. We have food scraps in the kitchen and the cafeteria of our schools. We want to compost. We can compost food materials, natural fabric, anything that would decompose, not plastic and, polyester and all those things, but anything natural, cotton, wool, silk, anything that's natural can decompose. And we create this healthy soil. We want to dry clothes outside, right? We want to conserve this energy. And we're talking about data centers. If we don't use it, it's about supply and demand as well, right? So the folks using these resources are also demanding the data centers. So let's look at ourselves and how are we contributing to that demand? How are we contributing to the demand? All right. So with composting, pretty simple. You can definitely look up how to compost. Really easy. You have brown material, which is the carbon, and green material, which is the nitrogen. You mix it together. Time, air, sunlight. It decomposes and you create your own healthy soil. Healthy soil. And this is what you can grow your food, your trees, and everything in. Right? We know a bag of compost. I don't even know how much it is at Lowe's anymore because I do compost. But it's money and it's a resource. All right. So when you're thinking about designing this space, you want to consider future generations. You want to consider what it is that it is you use frequently. And let's say you have herbs. You want to keep your herbs close to the kitchen door so you can open the door, get your herb, go back to cooking. You don't want to do it far away from your space. This is just one example. If you have deer, you have to think about that, where you're going to plant certain trees and how to protect it. And I'll go into that a bit later on in the slides. So your edges, we talk about edges, and edges are really important in designing and growing. Edges is where water pushes, when it rains, water is pushing a lot of nutrients to the edges. And this is where we can plant our grapevines, our other viney things on fences, anything can be grown on the edges, and it's very, very valuable. So the interface between things is where the most interesting events take place. And these are the most valuable and diverse productive elements in the system. And the edge is a place to take advantage of that. If you notice, if you see fences, right, they always collect all the bottles, all the plastic bags, everything is blown that way. And this is a way to kind of mitigate that. All right. So in this system that I'm sharing with you, we have to value diversity. So there's diversity above the ground and the diversity below. We talk about soil health, right? So we have to think as good neighbors and as good stewards of the earth. If we're using pesticides on our lawns, we're killing all the microbiome, all the rhizomes, the bacteria, the earthworms, all these living things that make our soil so valuable and nutritious and healthy, because this is how we get healthy trees, healthy plants, and we help the ecosystem and the environment that way, right? Because if we have great trees and great shrubs and great plants, we bring in the pollinators. If we have a diversity of plants, animals, insects, all these things, we bring in great pollinators, we're able to build tree canopies that'll actually keep us cool in these urban heat zones, right? It's the tree canopy that's missing, and what really got the fire underneath me, because I was like, I can solve this. This is what I do. I can help in this way, right? Yes, I see in the chat we're saying, these our elected officials are gaslighting. They're not doing what we want, but we have to do what we can do as well, right? The self-determination, going back to that. So thinking about all these things, making sure that we're not polluting our soil ourselves. We're not the ones destroying ourselves, right? Having to integrate, we don't want to segregate within the system. And I use the honeybee. I'm a fresh beekeeper right now. And bees are great pollinators, right? They go from one plant to the other, they collect the pollen, they go back to their hives. You take a little bit of pollen, they eat that, that's their protein, and they create honey from the nectar of the flowers. From that, we get some of the honey, leave some for the bee. We use the honey to sweeten our tea in the morning or our cakes or whatever it is we use it for. And then we also get the beeswax. You also have beeswax for candles and whatever else you need to use it for. For me, I use the beeswax as well. When I grow mushrooms on mushroom logs, you plug it, you use beeswax to seal it. So many functions. You have an integrated system. Everything has more than one function. It's synergistics and cooperative, right? The intersectionality of Earth, of nature's intelligence. All right, that's really, really important. Pollinators are important. We as human beings have to do our part. We're actually working against nature by not participating in it. We are part of nature. We're just spinning in the wrong way, as we all can see, because we're here as environmental justice activists. We're here to say we're going in the wrong direction and it's a dead end, literally. So we have to self-regulate. Take your time. Yes, increase your impact, but start with yourself. What are you doing to make this a better place for us, right? If each person did one thing, if each person planted one small thing, one small tree, we will have an amazing tree canopy in our neighborhoods. Observe your successes and learn from your failures. Anyone who's ever done a garden, you know that first summer you do something, you're like, well, I got one tomato. The next time you get two tomato plants and the thousands of seeds. It starts with one seed, right? We have to move forward and receive critique from nature to say, hey, this didn't work. Maybe I need more water. Maybe you need to go back and observe your environment. This plant that you put here in the sun, it actually likes the shade. The one that's in the shade actually likes full sun. It takes time. It takes time and relax. There will be failure and it's okay. That's what you learn from. Slow and steady wins the race. Plant a few new trees every year. Right now, Lowe's And our local moms, all these different places has local greenhouses. There's stores of plants right now being put out. Start with some seeds, and over time, nature will take its course, literally, and you'll have plants. And we can collectively burden ourselves with food, from food insecurity, from racial injustice, from the effects of redlining. We have to be, I believe, like the Maroons and create our own systems as we should, right? Because we are sovereign people, we're functioning, we think, we breathe, we're intelligent, as we know about PG County, right? And we're capable. So assuring that we're planting fruit trees and we're adding to the solution, succession planting. So if you plant tomatoes in or broccoli that you harvest once in the beginning of the spring, plant it again so that you'll always have it. When you're planting fruit trees, think about all the seasons. There's fruit trees that bear in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. So have different varieties of plants. When you choose wisely, don't have everything come in at once in the summer and then you have nothing in the winter. Persimmons are great for winter. Pomegranates are great for the fall. um, Apples as well, the tried and true for our area. Pawpaws are native to our region, from the indigenous people that are here. That was like their thing, but because it's not supported in the grocery store, it ripens really fast. It's not pushed in the capitalistic grocery store. So planting it is great. And we have to creatively use and respond to this change. And I'm using this butterfly metaphor because right now I would say we're not caterpillars anymore, we're in the chrysalis. We're about to become butterflies. And as we plant, as we till, as we grow our tree canopies, they're actually, I hear, trees take a long time to grow. There are trees you can plant that grow within 2 years really high and create tree canopies. There's ways that, again, nature's intelligence. There's way you can play, play with plants and trees and vines, um, and create what you want. And we can create our own oasis. So using these design elements um, can be can be helpful, and you can always add to it. And mistakes are welcome. We can have a positive impact. Now, remember, is this plant suitable for my climate? Are we planting mango trees and ackee trees? I come from a Nigerian Jamaican household from agriculturalists on both sides, and I've always been fascinated by tree planting and dirt and soil and all that good stuff. Grasshoppers, I don't see grasshoppers in grass, right? Where are the grasshoppers? That was a thing. I still see fireflies. I mean, yeah, lightning bugs. I still see them. Um, so is it going to be easy to maintain? Is it enough light or is it too much light? All these questions, as you can see, creating at first low maintenance habitat for your wildlife. Wildlife are essential. My mom lives in New York. After I was born in Nigeria, went to New York. My mother's Jamaican, and slowly she's the British influence, very African, but that British influence of that green lawn and the beautiful flowers, right? But her father, she grew up on a farm in Jamaica in the hills, Westmoreland, where the hurricane hit really bad this year. But I started just planting little trees here and there, for my mother. And so she has persimmon, fig, blackberry, cherry, two cherries, all these different trees, right? Rabbits. This is Long Island, New York. Hummingbirds, the amount of dragonflies just from those few trees that are attracted to her space. Hummingbirds on Long Island. I've never seen it until that point. So they'll come. It's very important. We're custodians. If we're the most, I'm putting it in quotes, most intelligent, um, animals on this planet, we have to also take care of the wildlife. It's important. And deer is a thing here. So I would say for deer, you plant a protective zone where you plant for them to eat so that they don't come into yours. Think about feeding them as well. Sorry, it's just they're gonna come. They're gonna come. So I just want to show some examples of what I've done, and then I'm going to go into what you can do as an individual, as a school, and a community, and share my contact information. Okay. Now, this is at Montgomery College in Tacoma Park. And I worked with the Community Food Forest Collective. We came together, just citizens, and then we started creating, and I was the lead designer in this particular site. And the map on the left is my rendering of what this space will look like in about 3 to 5 years. Right now, the picture on the right was I would say one year, so it was 4 seasons. This was last summer. And this was pure lawn, right on Philadelphia Avenue in Tacoma. If you drive straight down, it was just pure lawn, and it's developed into this space. So we have figs, of course, we have annuals, tomatoes, basil, all those things. But definitely habitat, the amount of wildlife that's here, we're helping pollination with through the bees. They're helping out creating mushroom logs. There's so many workshops there. It's amazing. And this was the second site. This was definitely, if you see the picture in the middle, right on Fenton Street, again, Montgomery Park, they liked what we did so much. At the other site, they asked me to create this site as well. And this was just one season. It wasn't even a full season. It was the first few months. And it was a full sun site. The other one was more shaded, but this was prolific. It went from this right here, just grass. Other people tried to create a community garden there, but they weren't consistent enough, or they didn't have enough people. So when we took it over, I mean, amazing. This was the first season, like I said, pomegranates already growing there. The earth was just waiting. And figs. This fig tree was about, I would say, 18 inches high, is busting out of the fencing. And I did mention I would talk about what to do for young trees and protecting it from deer. So you have to use fencing around your trees. Otherwise, they will chomp it down because they need food. This is their habitat as well. They're not invasive. This is where they live, and we live with them. So we have to protect the young trees because they will eat it. We can eat fig leaves as well, and so they'll eat it. And so this is just the abundance of that particular site blew my mind, how quickly it grew. We have persimmon in there. I think we got one. The blueberries were growing. It's just amazing. Okay. So how can you incorporate all this now, with your children, with your students, with your family, by yourself, whatever way? Save your seeds. So if you don't know, there's a difference between non-GMO and GMO. If you notice, a lot of watermelon is just no black seeds are in there, or they have these very immature, non-viable white seeds. It's not going to grow anything. So save your seeds. If you non-GMO starts with the number 9, and I believe GMO starts with 3, and then pesticide starts with 4. So you have to be very careful, right? We're voting with our dollars. Talk about voting, you're voting with our dollars, what you're buying, and save your seeds from non-GMO produce. Plant a fruit tree. If you don't have a yard, plant it in a container. If you don't have a container, plant it on your balcony in a container. It'll grow. It'll grow. One of my neighbors, she has a Mayor lemon tree, and she got about 3 big, beautiful lemons off of it last year. And she savored those lemons. Okay. It's so fun and so fulfilling to grow. And all you have to do is put it in the soil, water it, make sure it has the right sun, air, and nature takes hold, that natural intelligence. And if you don't have any of that, you have a kitchen, you have a table, water, and some seeds, you can sprout and grow microgreens. Super easy, super affordable, and super nutritious. We're talking about food insecurity. Now, we talk about taking our power back, right? Self-determination, microgreens, growing your own, getting the seeds, making it happen. Recycle the eco bricks. You can do that right now with your own plastic. Composting. There's a facility, College Park is doing it, but there's a facility in College Park, I believe is waste management for PG. I'm not sure if it's all of PG, but it's there. You can take your food scraps there. If you're not comfortable with doing your own compost at home, you can take it there and drop off your food scraps. That's anything, again, like I said, anything that would decompose. And you can also buy compost from that municipality. Um, they also sell to Montgomery County. It's huge. It's a huge space. Rain barrel, collect some water. Water catchment is important. Plants, believe it or not, prefer rainwater to faucet water that's filled with, chemicals and all that stuff. They prefer it. They grow better. They prefer it. Join a community garden or create one or start one in your school. Green Hood, my nonprofit, can help with that. Start a community garden. Join a CSA, a community supported agriculture, where you get a basket or a box of a variety of vegetables, I believe, whether it's bi-weekly, monthly, depending on which one you join. Look it up. Claggett Farm is one. Join a CSA. So while we're combating the food insecurity, we're also empowering ourselves by planting, sprouting, saving seeds, composting. We're doing all these things. So many things to empower ourselves. Do it with your children. Do it with the seniors, because they have a wealth of knowledge. They have a wealth of knowledge. Where people, wherever you're from, around the world in the diaspora, we know how to grow. We know how to grow, and we know some things. We know some things. So if you have any questions, I would like to hear it. And the further reading, Black Food Geographies, Race, Self-Reliance, and Food Access in DC by Shanti Reese. That's a great resource about food insecurity and combating all we've talked about here. Thank you very much. This is my email if you want to be in contact.
I do have a
Thank you so
question.
much, Toyin. We're going to take
No problem.
one question before we move into a 5-minute break.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
I thought I heard you mention something about eco bricks.
Yes.
Could you please expound a little bit on what is an eco brick? How do we make them and use them real quickly, please?
Sure. So if um, you get a plastic bottle such as this. Some even use glass if they're building, walls and things. It helps with retaining heat if you're building it with natural materials such as cob. But your plastic, Ziploc bags, anything with plastic, you get a stick. And every time you have plastic waste, of course, it's a clean bag because we don't want things growing in here, right? That way it's clean and dry. And you keep stuffing it in. And as much as you can, you take that stick and you push down all the plastic. And over time, it fills up and becomes really tight. You save that, put it to the side, and you continue with another bottle that we all have. And you keep going. And from those bricks, you can build your garden beds, maybe come together and I don't know if you want to build a sculpture, but I would go for the garden beds, or when we get into natural building, which is also part of permaculture, you can use it for that. So it's a way to reuse, recycle, and keep plastic out of the landfills. So anything that won't decompose goes in the bottle.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to
Thank you
ask a
so
follow-up
much.
question about that.
Who's speaking?
This is Mrs. Fox. Hi.
Hi. Last question. We need to move into a 5-minute break before we transition to Miss Christina's session.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Just curious, a- about the plastic thing. Is there a concern or is there a particular type of plastic? Because like you hear about the microplastics and whatnot leaching into our environment and potential harm.
So that is what we're trying to stop by compacting it into these bottles, right? It's an idea, it's a way to keep it out of the landfill, keep it out of the street, keep it out of our waterway, keep it out of the ocean, is to keep it compacted in these spaces. And then from that, in these bottles, and from that, it takes a lot to fill this up, a whole lot. And then from that, you can use it to build. So we're keeping it out of, we're helping to prevent those microplastic getting into our soil even. Okay? Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
And you can do
you.
more research on eco bricks as well if you want more further details. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toyin. We so appreciate it. I know that your presentation and others really resonated with the group here. So as I mentioned, we're going to take a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we will have a presentation from Miss Christina Kwok. And her presentation is specifically geared towards educators. So if you are not an educator here with us tonight, you're welcome.
Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. I'm just talking away. I was saying that after our 5-minute break, our next presentation is with Miss Christina Kwok, and her presentation is specifically geared towards educators. So that said, if you are not an educator in the room, you're welcome to hop off, but you're also welcome to stay. I just wanted to give you that primer that the very next speaker will be speaking directly to educators and how they can incorporate learnings about environmental justice into their curriculums. So that said, it's 7:22. We will be back here at 7:25.
That's the
All right, welcome back, everyone. So moving into our next presentation, we have Miss Christina Kwok, who is with Unbound Associates. Apologies, Unbound Alliance. And I'm excited to see how she chats with us about incorporating environmental justice principles into our curriculum. Take it away, Christina.
Here we go. Thank you so much. It's such a delight to be with you all. And Nicole, thank you so much for inviting me back. What an amazing session so far. I've just been taking copious notes and just so inspired by all of the presentations from before and the speakers from before. I wish I could say that I am an alum of the PGCPS system, but I am now a Prince George's County resident for 13 years now. I am a mom of 2 PGCPS students. One is a 6th grader at Greenbelt Middle School, and I have a 2nd grader at Glenarden Woods Elementary School. So it's just so terrific to hear from alum from the system and from others who are our neighbors doing such incredible work. So thank you for inviting me back and letting me be here with you all. I hope that for all the educators still left in the room, that you, like me, have jotted down probably a million ideas to try to integrate climate and environmental justice issues into your teaching. I think as I think Jamoni mentioned in her first presentation this evening, how environmental justice can be connected to any subject area. And I think Staci mentioned in her presentation that one of the biggest things we can do is to educate other people about these issues. And you all have such important roles in the PGCPS system to be able to help educate our young learners about all of these incredibly important issues. And so I hope that we can get into this and provide some brainstorming space to think about how to integrate these topics into your lesson plans. So as Nicole said before, I am the co-founder of Unbounded Alliance. We are a very small team of women working on climate and environmental justice issues in education around the world. The tools that I'll be talking about today are tools that we have developed and used with educators around the world, from Morocco to South Sudan to Cambodia, in all different kinds of educational contexts, with varying levels of educational with varying levels of access to resources and time in the curriculum, as I'm sure many of you are always juggling and experiencing. So the tools that we're going to go through today have been developed in many different contexts. We've refined this. There are always ways to improve it. But I hope that it provides you all with a space for thinking and planning for your students, you know, how to connect the dots, how to make those climate and environmental justice connections in your teaching, regardless of what you're teaching. So I'm going to link in the chat a link to a Google Doc. And so this will be your workbook for the rest of our session today. Please download it. I don't think you can edit it in Google Drive, so you're going to have to download a copy of it. So please download a copy of it. You can feel free to have it open as I talk through this process. We'll hopefully have some time, given sort of our time crunch today. We might not have time to do breakout rooms or any sort of major discussion around the tools, but I hope that as you have the tool out in front of you, you can listen, you can try it out. If we have time at the end, I would like for you all to do some independent work while we're in this kind of main plenary room here to try out and to ask questions. So you have access to the document. It should be, you should not have to use a password or anything. Please let me know if you have any access issues. But it should be, all the permissions should be set so that you can download it. All right, so I'll just launch straight into this, given how much time we have here today with you all. But just to give you a context, so how do we connect these incredibly important topics for our students, right? We have just these complex, sometimes feeling overwhelming issues that we want to introduce our students to, or create space where we can collectively think about solutions to. But how do we do that? And you know, where can we start? What kind of process can we use? So what I'd like to introduce to you all is what we call the climate integrated design process. And as I mentioned, it's sort of a tool that we've designed primarily initially. It was actually a 6-step process initially. We worked with education NGOs around the world to design actual education programming that integrated climate and environmental justice into the work. But then we began finding great traction amongst educators and teacher educators to use these tools as a way to integrate climate and environmental justice teaching in their actual teaching and learning in the classrooms. And so we distilled this process into 4 steps. And I'm going to go through these 4 steps and hopefully provide you all with a structure for thinking about, you know, how to integrate these issues. So as Nicole mentioned at the very beginning of the session, you know, we were hoping that you would go into these presentations thinking about not only how important and inspiring these topics are in themselves, but what idea or what issue would you want to try to integrate into your teaching? And so the first step is really about identifying that issue, and in particular, identifying an issue that is most relevant and relatable to your students and to their community, um, as a way to just begin your sort of climate journey, or your environmental justice journey, and as a starting point. And then I'm going to give you the steps, and then I'm going to give you an example just so that we can sort of begin thinking about how this might be applied. So for me, there were so many excellent examples that were spoken about in the presentations before, but I'm gonna focus on one that's more related to water quality. And so for me, the issue that I put down here for at least walking through the steps was around stormwater runoff, and in particular, stormwater runoff from polluting power plants that are polluting the water in the Patuxent River, creating environmental hazards for wildlife, and polluting the water quality for nearby communities. Your issue might be, access to food through a school community garden, or it might be monitoring the air quality around the school, or it might be thinking about the data centers, right? Any issue. This is where we're thinking, what is the topic that I want to integrate into my teaching? Oops, let me move on. Okay, the second step is about identifying the learning outcomes that you want your students and your learners to develop, and in particular, learning outcomes that are aligned with academic standards that you already have to teach to, right? So you're already having to achieve these goals through your teaching. What might they be? Where in your plan for the semester, your plan for the year, do you have a little bit less content, a little bit less activities already planned? What are the standards that you already have to teach to, and how might you, what might be the one that might most connect to this particular climate or environmental justice issue that you've identified? So for the sake of this example, for me, I chose a particular standard around math. I'm going to pretend that I'm a math teacher, and I'm going to speak specifically, or I've chosen a standard that I have to teach to that's around representing and interpreting data. There's also the student learner profile around critical thinking and communication that I feel like I could really use another learning activity to strengthen or to integrate into my planned activities. And the list could go on, right? You could select multiple ones, but these are the ones that I just chose for this example. Now, in terms of learning outcomes, I'm thinking about this in the context of math. I want to do something around stormwater runoff. Maybe one of the learning outcomes that I want my students to gain is, how to interpret soil drainage or even water quality data, and maps that illustrate data. Blaine had some incredible maps earlier looking at air quality, right? So what might be some ways that I could teach about representing and interpreting data that could draw in some potential data around stormwater, water quality, soil drainage, whatever that might be relevant to this particular environmental justice topic. I might also want my learners to have an increased concern for water quality, and an increased concern around potentially polluting sources that could exacerbate water pollution and exposure to environmental contaminants and pollutants and so on. I might also want to raise awareness, or want my students to be able to raise awareness among others about the impact of polluting sources and stormwater runoff that could be exacerbated by our, increased frequency of extreme storms and, greater levels of rainfall and so on that are being exacerbated by climate change, right? So the second step is all about trying to think, where am I going? What's the academic standard that I can try to connect to? What are the learning outcomes that I might want to try to achieve that are aligned with those standards as well? the third step is about identifying your academic entry point. What is the thing that you're going to teach that you're going to embed the environmental justice or the climate justice topic into, right? What is your academic entry point that you're going to connect that issue to? I've got my math teacher hat on. I'm going to use a math lesson on charts and graphs to target this standard around representing, interpreting data, and all these other learning outcomes that I've just talked about. And then the fourth step is around actually designing your climate justice or your environmental justice integrated lesson plan. And so this one, I'm not going to read through it. We'll go through it in a little bit later in the session. But here is the eventual lesson plan, or the rough, outline of the lesson plan that I have developed as a result of these different steps. Now, the whole process has a set of guiding questions that will walk you through each step so that you're not just, grabbing out of the air or trying to pinpoint, trying to organize your thoughts in your brain, but some guiding questions that would allow you to go through each step. So we'll go through this. If you want to pull out your, or have the the workbook open next to you, I will kind of tell you where we are in the workbook at the same time. So we'll go into that now. Okay, so with that step one, we're here trying to identify that climate and environmental justice issue that is relevant, right? And you've already had so much, your brain is flooded with so many great thoughts from right now, from the presentations earlier today, but you might need to spend a little bit of time doing some additional background research on that issue. You're not trying to be an expert in the topic, but you're trying to gain enough information about the issue so that you can begin helping to connect the dots, not only for your students, but also really for, how you're going to connect it to those academic standards and academic profiles that you already have to achieve, right? And this is in this particular thing will be in, I think, pages 3 through 4 in the workbook. So these questions in particular. So we're going to think about, how does climate and environmental justice impact your community, your city, your county, your state? What are the human and more than human consequences of this issue? And importantly, are there inequities that are worsened or created by it? And it's especially these last two questions that ensure that when we're integrating an environmental issue into our teaching, we're embedding the focus on environmental and climate justice. Because here, as our presenters earlier have all laid very clearly for us, it is the disproportionate burden of impact. It's a disproportionate access to resources that determine who, the experience of these environmental hazards and risks. So really spending some time thinking about the second and the third question will really help ensure that whatever you design has at its core an environmental and climate justice dimension to it. So to show you kind of how I use this process for my own thinking, for that example that I laid out earlier, the table here is broken out so that you can write your responses down in the large third column to the right. And then you have a column here in the middle, the suggested resources, where you can just sort of save hyperlinks, write down resources, you might find a video that you might want to use, or a story that could help, bring it to life for your students, or something you might want to look at again later. That column is there for you to store, your research as you're doing this brainstorming work. So as an example, I mentioned earlier that the environmental justice issue that I wanted to try to integrate into my teaching was around stormwater runoff from a nearby power plant that is polluting the Patuxent River and nearby residences. And then when thinking about the human and the more than human consequences, I wrote down here, quality of life for local residents and for wildlife and marine life will be negatively impacted with the heightened exposure to harmful and toxic pollutants in the water and in the soil, especially during and after significant storms. And this is going to be an even bigger issue because as climate change continues to unfold itself, these storms are going to be more frequent and more severe, and the risk of overflow, as we've seen with the Potomac River, is heightened, with especially with our aging infrastructure. So here the idea is, thinking not only about the human impact, but also the more than human, to really demonstrate, as our last speaker spoke to, the intricate connection between human and nature, and the human and the more than human world, so that we're always reminding our students that, we're not just thinking about us in nature, we're thinking about us as nature. So here is that kind of spot in your brainstorming to remember that point as you're thinking about how do you integrate these topics. And then the last one here, in terms of inequities that could be worsened or created by it, my response here was that the impacts of stormwater runoff from the power plant would be felt most acutely by the surrounding communities of color and disadvantaged communities, that lead not only to negative impacts on health, but also to local economic activity. So I think someone mentioned, increased rates of breast cancer because of the contamination of PFAS particles in the water, or the inability for fishermen and fisher people to be able to earn a livelihood off of, or gain sustenance off of the river, or so on, right? So these are things that as I was brainstorming the example, kind of how I would fill out that step one. Step two, we want to ensure that whatever climate and environmental justice issue that we are integrating is aligned with the academic standards, right? And again, these are things that you have to hit anyways. They're on front of mind all the time. What are they, and how can you use those to inform the learning outcomes that you want your students to develop through this climate and environmental justice integrated lesson? So in order to complete this step, you might need to take some time to first identify what part of the learner profile, the student profiles, you want to focus on. You want to make the connection, bridge the connection to, right? So here in this next slide here, I just threw up, like, here's a couple of the school readiness profiles for PGCPS for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, around math and reading. And as I was looking at that, I was, putting on my third grade math teacher hat, and decided that I was going to focus on represent and interpret data here. So hence, this was my the focus of my example. Okay, so I've selected my my academic standards, my, there are other profiles as well that I mentioned, communication and critical thinking, right? So now if we go to the workbook, we can begin to fill out step two. And step two, as you'll probably see in the workbook, is broken down into steps, or a step 2A and a step 2B. And step 2A is where you'll have the chance to think about that academic standard, those things that you're already having to teach to. And then here is step 2B, where you're thinking about the learning outcomes. And so here I used cognitive learning outcomes, socio-emotional learning outcomes, and behavioral learning outcomes. I'm not sure in PG County what the equivalent language is. It could be academic or disciplinary outcomes. I think social emotional learning is used in PGCPS. But in general, we want to think about a breadth of learning and not just thinking about knowledge, right? So much of the literature in climate and environmental justice education shows that we're really just, if we're teaching about these issues, we're focusing at it from a knowledge perspective, and we're not necessarily connecting to the socio-emotional dimensions, and especially not connecting to the behavioral dimension. So the actions, right? What are we equipping our students, our learners, to be able to do with that knowledge as well? So here we're thinking about, okay, so what are those cognitive learning outcomes that I can try to develop by integrating this topic into my teaching? Here, my response was that maybe students could understand how maps can represent data that is collected on environmental phenomenon like soil type or water quality. And then that information that data tells us information about the world. And my suggested resources here, it's pulling from the NGSS, it's pulling from the MCCR standards, the PGCPS school readiness profiles, and so on. For the response on that right-hand side is the point of, or the language from the the school readiness profile that I showed earlier. So it's about representing and interpreting data. In terms of the socio-emotional learning outcomes, I really would like to see my students gain an appreciation and a sense of concern for water quality and the impact that polluting sources like power plants can have on nearby water systems and then their surrounding human and more than human communities. In terms of behavioral outcomes, I would love to see my students feel motivated to share what they're learning with their friends and family, and not only the information about stormwater runoff or polluting sources, but really how data can be used to enhance advocacy, community action, and environmental justice when it comes to accessing clean water. And these two outcomes correspond with PGCPS's student learning profiles around critical thinking and communication. And so I've jotted those down. So, if I need to justify to anyone, how this potential lesson is helping to achieve the learner outcomes that are required by the county, this is how it does it, right? So I've clearly mapped out where I want my students to go in terms of the academic measures that they'll be academic indicators that they'll be measured against, and the outcomes that I want to see, blossom as we're talking about environmental justice issues in my math class. Step 3, which I think is on pages 9 through 10 in your workbook, gets at the actual entry point. What is the lesson? What is the unit? What's the week that I'm going to build this lesson into? And critically, how do I do this so that I am either teaching through one of these lenses or through all of these lenses? And these lenses are climate mitigation and climate and environmental justice, adaptation and resilience, as well as the justice dimensions. What does that mean? So when we are speaking with educators from around the world, oftentimes, especially when it comes to environmental and climate justice, there's a lot of terminology out there in terms of the types of solutions and the types of actions that can be taken. And so I want to take a quick pause here to just review some terminology. So as we're thinking about, energy equity, or thinking about data centers, or we're thinking about air quality, thinking about water quality, we're also thinking about this from, how do we mitigate or reduce the environmental impact, and in particular, the emissions impact of the source of the environmental justice issue? How do we promote carbon sinks, or how do we promote biodiversity so that nature and Mother Earth are doing what it does best in terms of regulating our natural greenhouse gases, and able to absorb our human emitted greenhouse gases at the same time, right? So we're thinking about mitigation actions or mitigation lenses through which we can teach about the stormwater runoff issue, which I'll get into in a moment, or also the adaptation actions, right? The adaptation actions are those actions that help to reduce the negative impact of climate change or environmental issues. So, what are those different types of approaches that I could teach this climate or environmental justice issue through? And importantly, how might I teach that in a way that also promotes climate resilience and climate justice? And so resilience from the context of climate change work is really about how do we enable and empower communities to anticipate, absorb, and recover from climate change or environmental hazard exposure and its related shocks and stressors, right? So how do we anticipate, absorb, and recover from that? But then when we move into a climate justice lens, we're thinking about the root causes of climate change or environmental injustice, the underlying drivers of vulnerability and exposure to those hazards, And we're trying to ensure that whatever solutions we're generating are fair and equitable, and centering the rights and needs of those who are most affected by the impacts. So just as a quick recap of those terms as we begin to think about step 3, which is really thinking about how do I take the environmental or climate justice issue and teach about it in a way that not only teaches students and learners about the topic, but teaches them critically the types of the dimensions of that issue where we can actually create solutions around it, right? So we're thinking about the mitigation, the adaptation and resilience, and the justice dimensions of that issue, so that we're not just stuck in, the hazard or the issue itself, but like the solutions, right? And this is where step 3 kind of allows us to think through that. So step 3, as I mentioned in my earlier, when I reviewed the whole example at the beginning, sorry, I can't advance my slides. I mentioned that my entry point was going to be around a math class that would address the standard around representing and interpreting data, but this class would be in a unit on charts and graphs. So this is the entry point that I'm going to use, and this is the lesson that I'm going to embed this activity around stormwater runoff and using maps and charts and graphs and data around water quality to teach my students about this environmental justice issue. Now, thinking about it from a mitigation lens, one way that I could do this is using what was the National Stormwater Calculator. I have it, when I did this presentation last, it was still there, but I'm not sure if this calculator still exists. But it was there and my idea when I was brainstorming this was to have students learn about or use that calculator, or as a teacher, I could use it myself and then present the maps and that kind of in the data to the students since they're third graders. But have the students learn about and interpret data related to factors that can heighten stormwater discharge across different communities in PG County, and then compare this to maps of the location of the polluting power plants, which I could do by dropping pins in a Google map, right, and show them in parallel with these stormwater data. And then use those maps as a way to not only talk about how releasing environmental pollutants in the water, is an environmental justice issue when it comes, excuse me, when it comes to exposure to harmful environmental pollutants, but that it's also a climate issue that requires a mitigation action because those power plants that are emitting the pollution or the water pollution are also emitting harmful carbon into the air that's worsening climate change. So that is my connection to mitigation. Whether or not I actually build that into my learning activity later will depend on how much time I have and whether this is the lens that I want to actually use in the classroom. What about adaptation and resilience? Maybe one way that I could teach through an adaptation and resilience lens is to have my students generate ideas about the types of data that they could gather and represent to help communities respond to an environmental justice issue like stormwater runoff from a nearby power plant by graphing data on water quality, or looking at data on water quality that has been collected after an adaptation measure has been implemented. So whether that adaptation measure is in PG County or a comparison location somewhere else where you can look at water quality before and after some kind of adaptive measure has taken place, could be a way to show this is the importance of taking action, right? This is what can happen if communities mobilize and are able to address the polluting source and either reduce the release of pollutants or find some way to minimize or reduce the potential impact of harm downstream or something, right? So this was my idea for teaching about this issue from an adaptation or resilience lens. What about from a justice lens? One idea that I came up with here was maybe I could show a video or share a local news article about the impacts of stormwater runoff for local communities in the county and discuss how maps can help communities represent data to raise awareness about how these impacts might be affecting them more than others, right? So like the example earlier about sort of the runoff into, I think it was Calvert County, and how the PFAS exposure was increasing rates of breast cancer there. That is clearly an environmental justice issue if other surrounding communities or have ways to avoid exposure to that water, to that contaminated water. And so again, just an idea as I was thinking, how might I teach this from a justice lens? And then finally, then moving into, okay, now I've brainstormed all of these great ideas. Now, how do I put this into a lesson? How do I incorporate this? And again, the guiding questions here are really sort of the outputs from all of the previous steps that you would have gone through from steps 1 through 3. And so this step is also broken down into parts A and B. The first step is about synthesizing all of the outputs from the previous steps and then coming up with sort of your golden thread, right? Like your overarching, this is the lesson. If I were to describe it in one sentence, this is what I'm doing kind of stage of your lesson planning. So here you would fill in your table based on the previous outputs from the previous steps, and then summarize what it is that you want to happen in this particular lesson. And so here I wrote that students can practice representing and interpreting data in a lesson about water quality and environmental justice. They gain an understanding of the impacts that polluting sources can have on stormwater runoff and how this can impact different nearby communities in different ways. They can learn about the importance of water quality and the unfairness that some communities experience that are more vulnerable to the exposure than others. And they can think critically about what those factors that increase their vulnerability, what those factors might be. And then they come away with a concern for water quality and the polluting power plants and see that as an environmental justice issue and have the desire to share that information with others. So this would be sort of the big picture of what I want to achieve. And then the next step is to leverage, this is probably something that you all are very familiar with, the 5E approach around engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And so using this scaffold, I can then kind of almost in some ways plug in and organize some of the ideas that came out of my previous steps into a sequenced lesson. And so step 4B is about plugging that in and beginning to bring to life your lesson that has integrated the environmental justice issue. So I'm recognizing the time, so I'm trying to speed through this. But so here we have the engage, explore, explain,
Google Phone
and evaluate.
Remember, you should not share this code
Can we
with anyone
please
else,
mute
and no one from
ourselves?
Google will
Yes.
ever ask for
I
this.
think Virginia Miller, your
Thank
name
you.
on your microphone needs to be muted. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. So here, I've used the 5E structure to help me sequence a lesson around all the things that I had just brainstormed. I'm going to start by engaging my students and have them watch a news clip about polluted stormwater runoff. I'm going to allow them to explore the issue in more depth by looking at some maps that I might print out from that EPA National Stormwater Calculator or pull some other maps that are like the one that one of our speakers earlier showed us, so that they can visualize the connection between soil drainage or water quality and the nearby polluting source that's causing those environmental contaminants to get into the Patuxent River, and thinking about, how do we see that environmental justice issue in data? How do we see that in maps that are visualizing the data? And then as the teacher, I might use some time to explain and introduce the concept of climate and environmental justice and have them reflect on the impact of polluted stormwater runoff. And then have the students sort of elaborate on that learning by have students interpret it and compare data and maps that illustrate that water quality, maybe in different communities, so that they can see how communities that have access to mitigation and adaptation measures might have different different water quality than those communities that do not have that access, and then evaluate, right? And here, the way that I might evaluate this is actually something a little bit more engaging, where students work in small groups and they brainstorm sort of an action plan where they would collect data to help communities that are impacted by this stormwater runoff, so that they could advocate for some kind of action, a responsive action to take place. So that was running through this process incredibly quickly, but the whole idea here was to introduce this to you. You have the workbook. If you don't have the link, I'm going to try to find the chat again, but the link was in the chat. There's a QR code to it as well. If we had more time, I would love to, walk through the actual process with you, or as you practice it yourself. But I think that might be all the time we have now, and maybe we could take some questions, clarification questions that might help as you try it out yourself. But that is it for now. I'm going to exit my screen share and see if there's any questions or things for clarification that I might be able to provide. I know it's a very overwhelming 30 minutes or so that I just spoke. No questions?
Hi, I'm Anne from Benjamin Tasker. And I'm lucky enough to be participating in that Terrapin program. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
So we're raising a baby terrapin from the Chesapeake Bay in our classroom.
I've heard about, yes.
So our kids are sending in weekly data. And so I feel like I've got this nice project already built in for me. Because I used to be the special ed teacher in a science class, but now I've moved into ESOL and they let me stay. So I'm getting a different population with it. And we have to use the science, they have to learn the language of science. So even if I'm applying my English language development standards, I can still make this work.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, I think I think as one of the speakers said earlier, you can integrate these issues into any topic. I used math for this example, but I've seen teachers in art and music and physical education find ways to integrate climate and environmental justice issues into their teaching, and it's really quite inspiring, how creative teachers are and what they can do. So yeah, certainly really great. Any other questions? I'll drop again in the chat the link to the workbook in case anybody wasn't able to get that. Let's see if there we go. Let me know if that works, or if you still can't access it. No other questions, then I'll turn it back over to Nicole, and I think there's some wrap-ups and next steps that need to happen. Thanks so much for your attention, everybody.
Thank you so much, Christina. So appreciate you. Let's give a warm round of applause, a virtual round of applause to all of our speakers today. I want to thank, of course, Christina and Jamoni and Staci and Octavia and Oluwatoyin and Blaine for all of your expertise and passion in your presentations tonight. It made that this evening that much more powerful. So, as Christina alluded to, we have a few closeout items for everyone. Um, before I do that, I do want to thank all of you for staying, all of our educators, any students and community members. Thanks for showing up and thanks for staying with us. We know that a lot of these topics can be very heavy, and we did not have a very long break to process things, but I do hope that when you leave away from the Zoom tonight, that you'll be able to process some things and reach out to the speakers with any questions that you may have. We will be preparing a closeout package for everyone, and it will have links to the speakers' presentations in that packet, as well as, excuse me, as well as any questions that may have been in the chat, the answers to those questions that we did not get the opportunity to respond to. That said, my closeout items are as follows. There is a post workshop survey, very short survey. If you complete that survey by 11:59 p.m. tonight, you will be entered in a chance to win a $50 gift card. Of course, you can complete the survey anonymously, but that will um, make you ineligible to be eligible for the gift card, because we'll need to contact you. Second, we talked a lot about what can we do moving forward and how can we take action. Stacy, you heard us saw us in the chat going vote, vote, vote. Well, in addition to voting, Jamoni also gave us lots of ideas and things that we can do to get involved. That said, all of you are welcome to attend tomorrow. Siege, Center for Engagement, Environmental Justice and Health. We are hosting a virtual advocacy training tomorrow where you will learn about current environmental justice bills that are sitting in the Maryland legislature, and how local advocates are trying to get those bills pushed ahead. It's also a great opportunity if you want to uh, invite your students to attend. It is from 5:30 to 8 p.m., but it's a very educational opportunity, especially for students, because we'll talk about the Maryland legislative process that's unique to Maryland. We'll talk about, what it takes for a bill to become a law in the state of Maryland. We will review the difference between advocacy and lobbying, and then we will also chat about EJ 101 again for anybody who is not there. And I do think it's a great opportunity for students because they will be in the company of our Maryland HBCU students tomorrow. So you're welcome to attend that. I will put that link in the chat as well. And then last but not least, before we move on to our other announcements, on Saturday, there is an environmental justice roundtable that Delegate Jamila Woods is hosting. There is a flyer. We will put that flyer in the chat for you, and you are definitely welcome to attend that. Stacy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that is in Clinton, correct? We will confirm that. But that said, those are all of my announcements. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ian Walker from the Akakeet Foundation. And then after Ian shares his announcements about EJ events, I'm going to turn it back over to Donald Bell and James Roberson with Prince George's County Public Schools to give you all the final information that you need to close out the PD for this evening.
Hello. Um, I'm Ian Walker from the Akakeet Foundation at Piscataway Park. I'll try and be real quick. I'm grateful for the opportunity to tune into this. We're doing a workshop series. Sorry. The Piscataway Park, if anyone's unfamiliar, we're in Akakeet, Maryland. We do tours and school visits for various schools in mainly Prince George's County, also Charles County, and some other places. We're doing a workshop series for America 250th. Our third workshop is on April 25th. It's called Justice in Place. Because we have a cooperative agreement with NPS, we're kind of under their authority. They were explicitly not allowed to use the words environmental justice. Like as a topic, it's been vetoed as an explicit topic. So it's justice in place. We're talking about um, examining the role of stewardship and empowering communities. We will try and talk about environmental justice as much as we can without actually being allowed to say those words. Registration is free if anyone's interested. I will post a link if that's all right. Thank you for letting me tune in.
Yes, boo to that, and
Yeah,
we have to come up with some crafty ways to talk about environmental justice when we're in certain spaces. So thank you
yeah,
for that. But Ian, if you are done, we can turn it back over to James and Donald.
I am. Yes. Thank you
Thank
again.
you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I want to begin by thanking our speakers one more time. I learned a lot throughout the presentations. The information was excellent. So just really thank you for your time tonight. The energy you put into these presentations. I really appreciated how you linked it to local issues here in Prince George's County or in Maryland or regionally. It makes a difference. Students want to know what is happening in their backyard, and because that's what they're experiencing. So thank you all for doing that. And certainly thank you to Christina for that model of how we can take that information and then embed that into our classroom teaching and learning. So tonight, like I said, hopefully everybody found it helpful and will bring at least one or two pieces into your classroom. I do have a couple of announcements. One, I'm going to start with the Maryland Climate Teach-In, and I am going to drop a link in the chat now. The Maryland Climate Teach-In is an initiative that's been going on for a couple of years for the month of April. Organizations across the state, not just school systems, but certainly school systems, schools are invited to participate, do some type of climate activity, climate education. And so PGCPS has really embraced this. Last year, we were the #1 school system with participation in the Maryland Climate Teach-In. And really, what is being asked is that in your classroom with your students, at a bare minimum, you teach. You give the knowledge about climate change. And this could be, a fairly short lesson in just like one period of class. Now, of course, you can take that much further and deeper, and you're expanding upon the information. You are looking for advocacy within your students. It is completely up to you. The Maryland Climate Teach-In does not put a lot of parameters around what happens in the classroom. They do, if you go to that website I dropped in, they have resources, they have recommendations and suggestions. There's a slideshow, it shows you what other schools have done in the past. But for PGCPS to be noticed, we do need teachers to register. And you can just register your school, you could register your class, whatever makes sense for you, but you do have to be registered. So I wanted to plug the Maryland Climate Teach-In. That is happening the whole month of April, so whenever you can make it work in April, that's fine. Next, I want to bring up the Student Ambassador Training. So again, I want to emphasize this is for students. This is not so much for you teachers. It's for students, and it takes place April 16th through the 27th. So students in your classrooms will participate By gaining knowledge in climate change and climate justice, they'll understand or they'll begin to understand the actions needed to address climate change. And then they're going to learn how to communicate effectively on climate change. And then hopefully an outcome of that will they'll gain some confidence on how to engage family, friends, neighbors, and just kind of their wider community in climate action. So teachers, for you to help make this happen with your students, there will be detailed guidance, classroom facilitation guides, and support and direction. I know Mr. Bell is coordinating some of this on his end. It is through Eco America, that is one of the partners with PGCPS. I believe last year was the first year that we put this into place, and we are looking to grow this year. So let me go ahead. There's an interest form, so I'm going to drop that in the chat now, and that lets us know who might be interested in getting their students involved.
And James, while you're dropping
training.
that in the chat, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Donald.
Okay, appreciate it. Yeah, no, James is exactly correct on everything that he stated. And just to add on to what James stated, this is the student. If any of you attended the climate ambassador training in December of 2025, this is like the student version of that. Right. And so some of our speakers this evening were a part of that climate ambassador training as well. And so they will go through the different modules and really talk about the what, why, and the communication. How do we build effective student communicators associated with climate change? And so it's a really good opportunity for your students to get involved. As teachers, there are ways that you can bring this into your classroom. And so if you fill out the interest form, you can learn more about the different ways. Like students can go onto the website on their own, but you can also take modules, incorporate it into your classroom, and incorporate the students that way. So if you're at all interested, please fill out that form to get more information from Eco America. As James mentioned, we are partnering directly with Eco America on this student ambassador.
I think we lost Donald.
It sounds like it. Thank you, Donald, if you can hear us. I have one last announcement. I know that many of you have already signed the attendance form. We dropped a link in probably somewhere between 5 and 5:30, and then kind of randomly throughout the presentations. You only need to fill that out once, but I will drop that back in case you missed it. But we do need everybody to fill out the sign-in sheet if you have not done so already. So I will drop that in now. Well, maybe not now. Oh, give me 1 second. There we go. All right, Nikki, I'm sending it back to you.
Thanks so much, James.
It says sign in form. Is it the right one?
That is for PGCPS educators to sign in. That is for your attendance tonight.
Right, but is that the same as the sign out?
It's all the same for us. I did not see a sign out form.
Right. If you all can hear me, you only need to fill out one form.
Yep. Thank you, Donald. So just to repeat, we only need to fill out one form for PGCPS educators. But I want to say thank you again so much. I'm going to ask Our speakers, if you are still here, if you could please stay behind so we could take a photo together. So appreciate you. We took one, for prep, but not everyone was here, but I would love to be able to do that with you. But we have come to the end. Thank you so much to all of our educators. Please feel free to come off mute. Thank our speakers. If you want to ask any questions, put them in the chat or just come off mute and ask them. But right now, I'm going to officially say thank you, and this ends our presentation for today. And I'm going to stop our recording now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very educating. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For the
Very